Uhuru, Uhuru, Uhuru. Uhuru means freedom. Um, Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, brothers, sisters, comrades. Um, my name is Mutulu Olubala, aka M1, aka M.A. Dele Gente, one half of the Tell It Like It Is. Everything is political rap duo Dead Prez. And hope you all tuned in and got your popcorn and in your comfy seat or chair or car or wherever you are in the world, because this is a celebration of 20 years of Let's Get Free. I lead off with Uhuru, which is a Swahili word, because freedom sets the agenda and has set the agenda for this conversation and sets the agenda for what we're going to discuss tonight. Let's Get Free is a piece of revolutionary culture. And let me tell you, there's a meme going around. If you could talk to yourself 20-year ago self, and if I could say something to 20-year younger Mutulu, I would say, let's get free. I remember with my comrade Stick arriving at the name of this album, which in general became a call. We had been wrestling with titles for this album that we had been toiling over for many years in New York City. And one night, getting out of a limousine, going into a record industry party with a still yet untitled album, we looked at our environment and looked around ourselves, and we told ourselves, let's get free. And this became the call that we wanted to send out to the world. This became a mantra that we wanted to resonate within ourselves and to line up with the soldiers and comrades and freedom fighters and freedom thinkers and organizers and activists around the world. So I welcome you here 20 years later to this particular discussion. Inside this discussion, we have invited some important people to have a discourse with and a conversation about not only the state of what's happening today and let's get free, but also how it relates to the world today. I don't think this discussion about the album could happen without Chairman Omali Yeshitela, who will be here with us. We have Timmhotep Aku, who's here with us tonight, who coined the phrase, Dead Prez was right about everything. You may have seen that floating around, and we're gonna talk about that particular piece of work and more. And maybe even Timmhotep will help guide this conversation as well. We also have my esteemed comrade and Grammy nominated producer and musician and all around great person, Sean C. If you Google, the credits are as long as your arm, and his reputation is even greater. We also will have brother Asa from Occupied Azania joining us today as well. So get ready, because it's about to go up, not down. It's about to go up. So with that being said, I'm going to keep time. We have a tremendous team who has prepared this particular event for us. And with that being said, I would like to invite first into this discussion my brother Timmhotep. Timmhotep, are you?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can.
It's great to see your face today. I got to say that, brother.
Yeah, man, it's good to see you too.
Yeah.
Where you at?
I am in Brooklyn, New York, Clinton Hill. So, folks out there, if this gets late and you hear some fireworks, know it's because I'm in an urban environment, trying to hold it down. But this is a very meaningful moment for me. Dead Prez, the Uhuru Movement, African People's Socialist Party, informed not just me as a young man coming into this like political understanding, but who I am as a cultural worker. You know, for those who don't know, I'm a writer and I'm an editor. I'm a strategist. I do a ton of stuff, and every time I do something that resonates within context for the community, that is liberatory, it echoes "Let's get free" and a sentiment of "Let's get free." So first off, I just want to start by saying thank you to Kanoum, Olubala, also known as Stickman. Thank you to everybody who was a part of that record, because it was a very much, for me, a world-changing record,
Thank you for being here. Also, salute to Kanoum. He's Ibomu now, not
Okay.
Olubala.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's beautiful, and we're gonna get to that even more too. I want to ask you about when we met. We talked about this a little earlier, but I want to bring this conversation here. Do you remember when you first met Dead Prez, and what was your first impression?
The first time I saw Dead Prez as an entity, it was you guys running around with D-Don and some People's Army members at Rocksteady, at a Rocksteady reunion. And I want to say it was either Manhattan, it was in Manhattan, right? Passing out tapes. My brother Rob Markman from Genius, he was there too. And we got the little These Are the Times sampler. But that wasn't when we officially met. When we first officially met, it was at Bobito's radio show, CM Family, on 89.9 WKCR. I was interning, this is my Cub reporter days or whatever. He's like, yeah, we got Dead Prez coming up tonight. I'm like, I bet, cool. I've been listening to their stuff. It's kind of ill. I've been reading these books, and y'all came up, and it just so happened that was the night that Amadou Diallo had gotten shot.
Yes.
For those who don't know, this is a legendary case of police violence in New York City. A brother named Amadou Diallo, in the vestibule of his building, pulls out his wallet, police shoot him 41 times. And I kind of was almost even breaking the news to you guys.
Yes.
And from that moment, it was bugged out because I felt like everybody has a point where they're radicalized or they're politicized, or it starts to crystallize that, like, all right, shit is not the way it's supposed to be. And that was kind of the moment when I had met you guys.
I remember that. I remember that exact time. And I remember regarding you as a very astute brother. I knew that there was a ability to align with you even in that moment, because as an organizer, that's what I had been taught to do, to see the forces around us that knew the time and would be able to resonate with what was going on. You talk about Diallo being shot 41 times. I mean, talk about the climate of hip hop at that time, in those days, and what made you choose your path, the path that you chose.
So let's definitely talk about that, because like what people have to recognize is that around the year 2000, the late 90s, is the peak of hip hop becoming popular culture and huge budgets, a lot of money being made. This is a point where hip hop leans into its materialism like it's never done before, right? Because now you might have $1 million budget for a video, right? It's recoupable, but you might have $1 million budget. And, at the time I was into a wide array of different things. Like, I came up in an era where hip hop is very, very diverse. It's stuff from NWA to De La Soul to like, DJ Quick and all that. So I like every type of hip hop, and the street stuff, the stuff that was money oriented, I was into it. But because of what I was observing around me in terms of the disconnect between the fantasy I was hearing, right? The aspirational fantasy I was hearing and the everyday conditions for people that I was seeing in real life. Like, I'm from East New York, Brooklyn. I'm from Flatbush. You know what I'm saying? I lived in Queens. I'm from the hood, right?
Right.
It was incongruous. And so when I tapped in with Dead Prez shit, I was like, yo, wait, these guys are talking about reality in front of us. Like, hey, I got a gun put in my back for hopping the turnstile, and I spent the weekend in the bookings. Damn, and here's police state. So
right.
What appealed to me was that the music you guys were making, the stuff you were talking about, felt like what I could see directly in front of my eyes, as opposed to something aspirational. And the only aspiration I got from the music was that of getting free.
Let me tell you, and this is important, you know, because a lot was happening in that time in the hip hop. You know, it was pretty wide open, like you said. The record labels, the oppressive record labels, these huge corporations loomed over our heads, and they I think in many ways exploited the culture by being able to, you know, string us along by these budgets. A lot of us, I remember being in many studio sessions with people like Fat Joe and Onyx and you know, Wyclef Jean at that time, who meant well, but who would come around and hear Dead Prez's album and they would say, "Oh no, you're not going to do that. No, you're not going to put that out." You know. And, you know, there had to be a conscious decision made as to your stance, because there was this idea that you could ruin yourself if you said the wrong thing. What I'm knowing now, 20 years later, is that you, and not even, and well before that, I want to say, is that you chose a path. You could have chosen to be a writer in a completely different trajectory. But yet, I think what you have chosen is to write about that reality. Why? What is the importance of being able to, you know, appeal and make it clear to the audience what it is that you see so important? Why? Why did you choose this? Why do you sacrifice?
For me, I believe cultural work is directly connected to the benefit of the people, right? The humanization of the people, the empowerment of the people. And that's something I got directly from you as a cultural worker. And to flip this around a little bit, because I'm usually the one asking the questions. You know, I met you as Mutulu from National People's Democratic Uhuru Movement and M1, but I didn't know you prior to that, right? So when this record was coming together, what kind of young man were you? And why did you and Stick say, you know what, even though we're hearing things from people who are like, this message is so strong, it's so potent, it's a little scary. These folks, you know, they control the purse strings and they got our lives. Where was your head at? Where was your energy at to be in the state to make this record in this way?
Well, I have to say, you know, we are products of revolutionary organization. And this happened because we saw the same incongruency that you saw in our communities. You know, I met Stick in Tallahassee, Florida, and there's a huge disparity. Matter of fact, you know, I have to say, if you're Black, you're poor. You understand? So this is a general understanding that we were getting at 16, 17, 15, him being 15 when I met him, and me being 17, and we making sense of the world. We were charged with becoming free because we saw that was the only, we didn't see getting a job at McDonald's and working our way up to the manager. We didn't see, you know, right. It was the only way out was to become free. And so our analysis of, you know, the world was, you know, Malcolm, you know, and Marcus, and Huey, and eventually we ran into the Burning Spear newspaper, and from there it became clear to me. It's like once you see something, you can't unsee it. Once you learn something, you can't unlearn it. At least for most of us, it's what happened. So for us, hip hop became a tool. You know, we were organizing before, and we were really battling with keeping the attention of the minds of our peers and our comrades who really didn't want to do nothing but go to a party or get over or hustle some weed. And we were like, nah, but we can get free though, you know? And so I just got to say that is the reason why when you met me, which was not too far later than that, why that still stood in my heart. I couldn't be won by trinkets, of whatever the system could offer. I saw the best thing I could do is get in there and undermine this whole thing and explode the system. And I want to say fair game with you asking the questions, because you do that best. And I want to ask you also, would you mind, moderating this particular Let's Get Free commemoration with me? So, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, you have two hosts or two moderators. Now you have one and Timmhotep, and this should be pretty good. I'm going to move quickly, but let's talk to Dead Prez was right about everything. Afropunk. Why did that happen? My wife sent it to me. She said, "Wow, did you see this?" I said, "Wow, this is." I looked at Uhuru. I said, "What? Tell me why." When did this happen? This was 2019, correct?
19. This is 2019, towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
And it was something that I was thinking for a long time. So it's all spurred by like an idea I had that became a tweet that a bunch of people saw. And it was me literally observing what was going on under the Trump regime, right? And seeing how things are changing, seeing police violence be as intense and seeing police being as militarized as they ever were. Me seeing literally our people in the same struggle for human rights that we've been. And then I listened, I was listening to the album one day. I was like, yo, they hit everything on some political education for the masses, for the layman, eye-level shit that you could all understand, right? And I was like, yeah, they schools, they talking about the school to prison pipeline that people are talking about right now, right? Wait, hold up. They talking about this over-policing, and they're talking about this mass incarceration. And what I've seen in the past decade, especially with people like Ava DuVernay, films like The 13th, there's an awareness that's happening, right? That's it. And I'm like, yo, I was primed for all of this stuff through my love of hip hop. And these guys, Dead Prez, brought me that,
Wow.
So, for everybody out there who hasn't read it, it's on afropunk.com. It's called Dead Prez Was Right About Everything. And the reality, it was like, it sounds hyperbolic, but when we take stock of what's going on right now, I hit on everything.
Wow.
That's what
I got to say, I take no credit for it. Myself and Stick are students of the revolution, and it came through us. And, I'm about to get into that even more. I'm about to say a few names. I'm going to say Abner Louima. I'm going to say Amadou Diallo. I'm going to say Cedric Cedeno, right? I'm going to say Sean Bell.
Eleanor Bumpers,
right? So, when we look in the face of George Floyd, we've seen George Floyd so many times, I got to say, this is what prompted us to make songs like Police State. So right now, I want to, if you don't mind, I want to go into Police State. Let's play Police State, and then we have something important that we're going to do after that. So, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades, friends, and I know the enemy is out there. Let's get free, Police State.
You have the emergence in human society.
I throw a Molotov cocktail at the precinct. You know how we think. Organize the hood under ICYMI banners. Red, black, and green instead of gang bandanas. FBI spying on the student radio antennas and them hidden cameras in the street light. Watch society with no respect for my people's right to privacy. I take a slug for the cause like UEP, while all them fake rappers try to copy Jay-Z. I want to be free to live, able to have what I need to live. Bring the power back to the street where the people live. We're sick of working for crumbs and filling up the prisons, dying over money and relying on religion for help. We do for self like ants in a colony. Organize the wealth into a socialist economy, a way of life based off the common needs. And all my comrades is ready. We just spreading the seeds. The average black male live a 1/3 of his life in a jail cell, because the world is controlled by the white male, and the people don't never get justice, and the women don't never get respected, and the problems don't never get solved, and the job don't never pay enough, so the rent always be late. Can you relate? We living in a police state. And I want to say those are the lyrics of my partner, the incredible Stickman, who was the verse #1 on Police State, which was produced by Head Rush Productions, that's taught here in Abu, who we go back to Tallahassee with, and who traveled to New York with us. But just like the intro of Let's Get Free, the intro of this song, Police State, happened because of the leadership of the next person who is coming to this particular conversation. I'd like to introduce the voice of Wolves, or Licking the Blade, as he calls it, as we've renamed it, and Police State, and the initiative behind a lot of concepts like I'm an African, and a lot of what Let's Get Free, again, means to Dead Prez, the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, the founder of African internationalism. Welcome, Chairman Omali Yeshitela.
Uhuru Africa, thank you so much. This is extraordinary. I can't tell you how much I'm enjoying it up to now. The discussions you're having with Comrade Timmhotep, and the music, watching the video and listening to the music is extraordinary. Yeah, I'm really pleased to be here.
Well, I can't, I'm at a loss for words, even being the moderator, at what immense effect you have had on myself and Dead Prez, and hip hop culture. I have to say that, again, talking with Timmhotep, the reason why our trajectory is the way that it is due to our membership in the Uhuru Movement and the experiences that we have had, and political education from the Uhuru Movement and the African People's Socialist Party. So I am thrilled to have this conversation at this time. And, you know, I want to talk to you. Let's go right into Police State. Talk to me about how that particular piece happened and what it means today.
Let me just say, comrade, that I will happily accept responsibility for the ideological influence I believe that we had on Dead Prez. But it was you and Stick, your talent, your genius, your stick-to-itness, your getting in the mix where so many other people like yourselves had gone into it and didn't survive it, didn't make it, and then sometimes they didn't know they didn't survive it because they made a lot of money. And so I don't want to understate that. When this album was made, I mean, it was something like 28 years after the founding of the African People's Socialist Party. It was more time than that after the founding of the Uhuru Movement. And the African People's Socialist Party was founded at the time where our revolution was being wiped by, you know, people were murdered all up and down the place. Huey is dead, Fred was killed, Malcolm killed, King killed, Lumumba killed, and Nkrumah overthrown. This is what we were looking at. And we were also looking at a movement that had surpassed this notion that somehow we can talk our way into freedom. We can make the oppressor like us. We can say Black Lives Matter or something like this, and that was going to make the difference. We had passed that era. That era was gone. Malcolm was not about that. And even King had made further steps to the future. And one thing that we had come to understand this question of the state. The state is an instrument of repression. It is of coercion. It exists, as we said there, at a time where you have a society that's split between haves and have-nots, and those who have it as a consequence of taking it from those who don't have anything. And that speaks so eloquently to the existence of Black people who the wealth of Africa and African people in various places around the world created all the wealth that we see around us. So the state was a fundamental question. It was a question that we were trying to help African people who, especially those who call themselves activists and revolutionary, understand this entity here, this thing called the state. It is the colonial state. It is the apparatus of coercion that killed Malcolm, killed King, killed Lumumba, did all these horrible things, and that is part of what we have to overcome. So we had been involved in the party, the African People's Socialist Party, the Uhuru Movement, for, like I said, 28 years when this album came out. And our objective in part was to complete the revolution that Malcolm was involved in, King was involved in, Lumumba, even Che Guevara. We wanted to complete that revolution, and that's what we were trying to get out. And then when we met you as revolutionaries, and you came to us as wanting to be revolutionaries, and you took on the revolution. So rap had nothing to do with it. That's and right. As Comrade Sean C. said, hip hop was a interesting place at that time, and I wasn't into hip hop. I mean, I was into revolution. And what was so magnificent is that we contributed to this really important phenomenon of cultural workers who are part of the revolution. And some, because culture is not automatically progressive. People like to talk about African culture. Well, African culture is like, it's important to us, et cetera. But the thing that makes it relevant is if you're a slave writing love songs that don't have to do with, I love you so much, I'm gonna kill the slave master, right? Lighting love songs, it doesn't mean anything. But to, as artists, you assume the responsibility of, as revolutionaries, you assume the responsibility of speaking through art to masses of our people on the ground where we are. And that's where we've always been located. As you know, the Uhuru Movement, the African People's Socialist Party, right on the ground in the most impoverished sectors of our communities here and around the world, where the masses who are going to make this revolution are located. And then we run into you, and then you take on this incredible task. I say you and Stick, yes. Take on this incredible task, and you become cultural workers and assume the responsibility of revolutionary cultural workers. And what all art does, it helps people to see the future. It helps people to understand where it is that we are trying to go, and especially if it's a revolutionary art. And yes. That's what this incredible album did. It took theory. This was a piece of African internationalist theory that was popularized and taken out to the world, and that was incredible. So, and I didn't, as I said, we didn't meet as rappers and somebody who loved rap. We met as people who were trying to overturn this oppression of our people. And then what you did, you and Stick, Dead Prez, just became an important instrument to further that. And that's what we're looking for. We have to create a cadre of cultural workers, not just in the abstract, not just people who can talk militant, et cetera, but you were also tied to organization and tied to theory. And there were objectives to what it was that you were doing all the time and telling people about the state, right?
Right.
That was really important, yeah.
So I just want to say this, at that time, we when we came forward, we knew that Let's Get Free might not be a popular sentiment in hip hop, because the discussion was somewhat different. Tupac had been murdered. There was a different kind of dynamic happening, with it, and the minds of these brilliant Africans who were making these songs were being won by the system, and we made Police State, and I just have to say, before this, we made Police State before we made the rest of Let's Get Free, and we took it up to the record label. We said, this is the first single. This is the song we're gonna put out first. They were like, oh, well, okay, if you think so, they were scared shitless. Their pants, and so I have to say, the song didn't get any traction. You know what I mean? The radio didn't, wasn't immediately, it wasn't a radio friendly song and stuff. But I have to say today, 20 years later, if MSNBC could, this would be the soundtrack to what they would say today. It's ironic, but and the reason why is because of the idea of defunding the police. We've seen it across the banners. People are writing on the streets and holding signs. I would like for you to speak a little bit about police state, not to belabor this too much, but I think it's important that we talk about it.
I think that's right. And because what had happened is the state is romanticized by the oppressor. The state, and like I said, it's not just the police, it's the court system, it's all of that. You can walk into a courtroom, the courtroom is set up like a church. You go there, there's the altar that the priest is behind with his robes and stuff like that. You have to be silent. You have to stand when he comes in, sits, etc. It's just this romantic, idealized thing, and the police too. And so what we've had up until recently, because they killed Malcolm, they killed most of the revolutionaries, this notion of the cops, the pigs, as the Panthers, so eloquently, characterized them, now put forth as these domestic warriors, home front warriors, and they've been held up to this great esteem, even as they're murdering all of our people. That's what's happening now. Subsequent to what has happened to George in particular, to George Floyd. I mean, as you said already, this stuff has been going on in horrible sense, but a combination of forces, of factors, we can talk about that later, contributed to this explosion with George Floyd. And what we've noticed a long time is that white people don't mind the police doing to us what they do, they just don't want to see it. Right. And it's the same thing around Vietnam. What killed Vietnam, not because white people hated that the Vietnamese being killed, they didn't want to see it because that means they had some responsibility for it. So here this thing happens with George Floyd and it explodes and masses of people all around. And some people for any number of reasons, but Black people in particular blew up. And all around the world, this thing happened. And now the prestige, not only of the police, but the United States is plummeted. The whole prestige of the United States is plummeted. People around the world, the United States going around killing people, starving people in the name of making people free and for democracy. And then this is what you've got. And so the prestige of the cops plummeted. And so now you have all kinds of forces out there trying to deal with that reality. You got cops getting on one knee. I don't know who they're imitating, the guy who killed George Floyd or Kaepernick. So they're down on one knee, etc. They got the National Guards who come in there to suppress the people doing the electric slide. I mean, this is the state that we're looking at, that's trying to dress up itself. And then the more far-seeing forces, because of the state has become the police become so they're being demoralized. I saw a big old guy, right? This guy cop, and he's almost crying because he doesn't get any respect anymore. Right. I'm watching this guy and what have you, and they are demoralized. A large sector of them are demoralized, and so you have the state now trying to recuperate, or clever politicians in some instances, trying to recuperate and trying to say, well, we're going to defund the police, but they're saying that now because of the fact that the prestige of the cops have plummeted, down to almost nothing. This is the first line of resistance to people's struggle to be free. Whether it's here, any place around the world, cops, the pigs, they're the ones who are first in line. So now people are saying defund the cops. And of course, it's something that the liberals can jump onto, and many liberals, not all liberals, but many liberals can jump onto this as well, because defunding the cops is not necessarily eliminating the state. A colonial state still exists. And we saw that happen in Egypt when the so-called Arab Spring happened, and the cops were the ones who were suppressing the people after they forced them to get rid of the guy who was the president there, a general, who the US government had been given billions of dollars every year. So the police were on the front line, as they always are, and the people said, we don't want the police. And because the military came and seemed to moderate what the police were doing, they said, give us the army, right? So they got what they said, be careful what you wish for, right? But the army is an instrument of state power. It too is the state. And the state requires a monopoly of violence, monopoly on violence. That's why they want everybody to give up a gun. That's why they stop and frisk 850 people, 850,000 people in New York. Because they require a monopoly on violence. That's what the state is. And so, so I think it's important that this is happening, the defunding thing is happening, because it shows the loss of prestige of this entity. But believe me, the government, the ruling class, and the state itself will change its form. As long as the state's there, they don't care if you call it the police or your next door neighbor, you know, and at different times, the next door, well, not your next door neighbor, but the neighbor who across the tracks was the state, you understand, was the police, right?
That's
so I think it's really, it's significant that that has occurred. It's really powerful that that has occurred. Now we have to push it to say not some defund the police as such, but Black community control of the police, which is not the same thing as saying put some Black people in charge of their stuff, but our stuff. And this, the police, the state has to be negated. And negation means more than saying no. It means that we have to replace it with our own power. And that's why we demand Black community control of the police. And we get that any way you can. And I mean that literally, you know. So anyway, yeah.
I love it. I gotta say, Uhuru, we could talk forever about this, but I know we have a beautiful night ahead of us, and I want to push this conversation forward. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters who are tuned in, I hope you are here. If not, tell a friend to tell a friend. I just saw someone tweet, I don't care who's trending on Twitter, Chairman Omali Yeshitela is live right now talking with M1 of Dead Prez. I want to salute that, get in place. And this, again, when you turn when you place the CD in the rack, when you had the cassette of Let's Get Free, now if you go to whatever platform that you play and you press play, the first thing that you hear on Let's Get Free is what is about to happen next. I'm not gonna belabor it. I'm gonna allow you to see it in full form. But next up, I want to play this piece of content that you may know as Wolves.
Let me tell you that's where the revolution is. And when they did this to the young
Chairman Omali Yeshitela of the African People's Socialist Party, that literally just brought me to tears. I literally, for many reasons, but we'll talk about it. I want to ask you, unfortunately, I say unfortunately, this is still relevant right now. Maybe talk about why you said that, why you said that piece.
Yeah, everything that you find on this album speaks to this issue. And first of all, the reason I prefer calling it licking the blade, because it's a concept, you know what I mean? And you say, what them brothers doing out on that corner? They're licking the blade. Right. You know what I mean? They're out there licking the blade. They think they're getting over, but they're licking the blade. Right. And, but it is counterinsurgency. And that's the state, again. That's the state. The brother, the comrade who wrote this book, he was located in San Jose for the San Jose Mercury News. I'll think of his name before it's over, but he had done a series of articles. This was after we used to, I understand that you were responsible, you may be responsible, I've been told, for Dave Chappelle talking about the White House is the rock house and Uncle Indeed. Sam is that's us, that's me. And that's right. The slogan that we used to have. The White House is the rock house and Uncle Sam is the pusher man. And that's the state that's responsible for all the stuff that's been put into our community. And it's what an extraordinary form of counterinsurgency, where you get the victim to participate willingly. The victim thinks is willing, but every 12 minutes, this guy's got to get a hit. He's got to get a hit. He doesn't have time to think long term. He can't think of revolution, think of struggle, because every 12 minutes, this guy's on a mission. And so that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the state as it attacks us in the most insidious ways. And that's one way. And this guy that I was telling you about, who wrote this for the San Jose Mercury News, he was, first of all, it was really well received. And then the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times attacked the San Jose Mercury News. This guy ended up, losing his job. He wrote a book on it. And eventually, he was said to have killed himself because he tracked the CIA's involvement. I mean, this brother Freeway Ricky, I think his name was,
yes.
He had never seen cocaine in his life. It was given to him by the CIA. This is documented, recorded, and what have you. So the government, the United States government, had a plan for us. And this is after they had first done heroin and seeded our communities with heroin. And then after that, when they left Vietnam, that area that they call a Golden Triangle, where you had most of the poppy coming from, that they turned into heroin. And then they went, the US government went into South America, more specifically, they attacked Nicaragua, and they were engaged in war against the people in Nicaragua. They did the same thing, killing two birds with one stone. They had airplanes landing at Homestead Air Force Base in a neighboring state to Nicaragua, and they were unloading Costa Rica. And the CIA agent's name was John Hull, and they would unload guns to give to these contras, these counter-revolutionaries, and then the same airplane, they would load up with dope and cocaine, and they'd bring it back, and they seeded our communities with it. It was an incredible, insidious, it's hard to even believe that a government would do this kind of thing, but a government that's founded on rape and pillage and genocide and what have you would do anything. There's nothing that this government will not do. There's nothing that this system will not do. And the reason we know that is because we're sitting up in America as opposed to being some other place where we should be living happily without having to go through this nonsense and talk about let's be free. But it takes an incredible amount of violence to impose a colonial domination of a people. And they've used every form of violence against us, every form of warfare against us, ideological warfare, chemical warfare, biological warfare. They call it colonial virus. That's what we call it. And or some other name that they have. And of course, the backbone of all of this is military force. And sometimes this military force, they call it the police, but it's the state. And in places like Vietnam, they call the police Marines. And in this country, they call the Marines police. You understand? That's the state, that we're dealing with. So I thought that was really important. And that was really important. Yeah.
I want to ask and bring Timmhotep Aku into this conversation as well. I think he has some important things that to add to this conversation. Timmhotep, you there?
I am.
What are you feeling?
As the chairman was talking, so many things popped up in my mind. And going back to, there's what he referenced was a book called Dark Alliance by a guy named Gary Webb.
Gary Webb. That's the guy who wrote the book that started off as newspaper articles, and he had tons and tons of documentation for the San Jose Mercury News. But yes.
And it's funny because maybe a year ago, I was doing some research in this story because when it came out in our community, it was like a big thing that for us to learn about this triangular trade, really, that brought all this cocaine into our communities, right? And then you saw major institutions, prestigious institutions, attacking his credibility, debunking it. Long story short, those people had to retract those statements, so-called debunking it, and now that's an accepted part of the canon of history, is that really happened. For those who want to see it presented in the fictional world, if you watch the show Snowfall on FXX, they literally show you exactly how it went down, right?
Yes.
And I think what also strikes me about Licking the Blade and that understanding and that simple clip that he had is that it's not about my own personal amassing of wealth or well-being. It's about the community. So when the wolf licks the blade, he's killing himself as a member of the community.
Yeah.
Right. And I thought that was a really amazing way to encapsulate how interdependent we all are in the community. You know?
Yes, indeed. I was so moved by it. It made me carry that VHS of exactly that tape. You know, I was in the agitation propaganda committee in the Uhuru Movement, and that's how I ended up being in New York City, making an album, thinking to myself, what's going to speak to my brothers, and that's what we laid over pulled it off a VHS tape and laid over the track and thought this is going to capture the minds, you know, of my brothers and the People's Army. You know, we're licking the blade. You know, those guys from the Bronx and from Queens. I was trying to win them into the revolution, and I said, this is what's going to do it. So I just want to say, what a powerful piece of propaganda that was. Just amazing piece. I got to say, we are 8:55, 9 o'clock. We have to move into this thing, but I want to say, Timmhotep, is there any question you want to ask? I have a couple of things I want to say in these 5 minutes before we move to a next segment. Go ahead.
Real quick, I think in a very simple way for those tuned in, can we address the concept of counterinsurgency? Because not everyone with not everyone has the same political education, so people may not understand that concept.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's really important. By the way, the sister who leads our work, the regional work in the Midwest of the United States, because a lot of people out there licking the blade in St. Louis, you know, she uses that regularly, finds ways to play it, you know, loud from loudspeakers and what have you in the community so people can pick up on that. I just wanted to say that to you, because it resonates even today, you know, it does.
Yes, it does.
And that's what we're talking about. And Timmhotep, what was that you were just raising?
I was asking for in very simple terms to define for people.
Yes. There's a thing that when oppressed people rise up against their oppressors, the oppressors have developed what is really an art and a science. What they call the rising up is insurgency. They say that's an insurgency. That's an insurgent movement. People are rising up. So they've developed a real science and art of defeating it, of pushing people's struggles down. They call it counterinsurgency. And they use all forms of warfare, as I mentioned, psychological warfare, economic warfare, political, and military is the key to all of it. And the primary responsibility, task of counterinsurgency is population and resource control. And that's what you see, the U.S. government doing in places like Venezuela, where they're trying to do when they put sanctions on people, so they're gonna starve you unless you do what we want you to do. That's counterinsurgency. And people were reading something about counterinsurgency as the U.S. government was involved itself in fighting against people in the Middle East. But that's what it is, and it's employed against us all the time. Counterinsurgency is critical.
Sounds like COINTELPRO.
It is. That's COINTELPRO is counterinsurgency.
Okay.
Yeah.
And disinformation. Yeah.
Yes.
I want to say that you know, what I understand is that there are music, you know, hip hop culture had been employed as an agent in the counterinsurgency. You know, I recognized it from the inside out. You know, I saw the distraction, the mass distraction, you know, that was happening, and we fought against it tooth and nail. Every chance we could get, we would choose the kind of propaganda or media or tools that we would be able to use. Fortunately, the record label that we were a part of, Loud Records, and we'll get into Loud Records and Sean C, had employed a strategy that was directly tied to the streets. And so we were able to touch the street and therefore kind of, you know, break that stuff up. And
people.
Yeah, exactly.
The people. That's the critical element all the time.
Yeah.
Informed, educated masses of people break through all of that stuff. You know, they think they got us locked down with Facebook and all these other instruments that the people are critical. And that's what makes this album and the cultural workers so important. Go to the people. We win every time.
Yeah. So I want to say to people out there who are listening, when they're critical of the rap that's happening today, I want you to be able to decipher what part of it does belong to the counterinsurgency, because it does. Some of it does. I mean, some artists today, aren't articulating well, or some people say mumbling, just because they aren't articulate. But some are doing it on purpose.
Yes.
And I think we have to be armed with the ability to tell which from which.
May I just say, comrade, that it's important to understand this started before hip hop. They've used the popular culture of the people. I can tell you instances, I don't want to call the names of these brands and what have you, but who were, they're actually hired by CIA. Certain music in the middle of the revolution would hit. And even certain movies that came out at the time that made the pimp, like the great hero and what have you, the dope pusher became the hero. This is what they were doing. And so it's always been there. And, that the CIA bought the rights, the movie rights to Animal Farm.
Right.
Because they wanted to use that, against the communists and Soviets and things like that. So that stuff has been going on for a while. And yes, it happens with hip hop. Yeah.
And ironically, or not ironically, we chose to flip Animal Farm.
I know, that's why I mentioned it.
Into Animal and Man.
Yeah.
And if Stick were here, I would ask him to say it. He probably wouldn't do it, but I was asking. We get that request on the stage everywhere we go. I want to say one of the most important things that happened to me is becoming a revolutionary in my whole life. And also part of that, moving into the next segment, was the declaration that I'm an African, not Black, not an African American, but an African. So with that being said, and not to go too far, I want to say I want to play the next tune and then bring in our next guest. And Chairman, we can have a discourse with that. So ladies and gentlemen, 20 years of Let's Get Free, let's celebrate it together. I don't know where you're at. Beat your chest, take your shirt off, dance in your living room with your underwear on, whatever you're gonna do. I'm an African. That's what I'm gonna do. Yes. Uhuru. And I feel the very same way right now. All these Uncle Tom ass kissing niggas got to go. I'm an African and I do know what's happening. I want to give a big shout out to Stickman, who is so eloquent. Like Fred Hampton Sr., Deputy Chairman of the Black Panther Party, Chicago, Illinois, said he speaks in plain proletarian English. He was able to eloquently talk about Africa in a way that was palpable to our friends. We go around the world and have them all around, even the white folks. I'm an African, but we knew what it was about. And I got to say that the root of that is African internationalism, which is the thread that was woven throughout the album, that came to a point at that song, I'm an African. But as we talk about African internationalism, I'd also like to bring into this conversation a comrade from the Uhuru Movement. I'd like to bring in, straight out of occupied Azania, you might call it South Africa, I'd like to bring our comrade Asa into this conversation. Are you here, brother Asa? Asa Anpu, are you here? I see him.
It's cold.
Uhuru.
It's cold there in South Africa right now. It's freezing. That's why he's all bundled up.
It's freezing, Chairman.
Give a shout out to the people, brother, and introduce yourself.
Uhuru Africa. Yeah.
Uhuru comrades.
Yeah.
introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Hey, I want to, say Uhuru to Chairman Omali, to brother M1 and Stickman, Dead Prez forever. Yes, sir. My name is Asa Anpu, aka General Nobody, RBG. Straight up People's Army, BLA, baddest lyricist around. And, I'm very honored to be here, with, with the OGs, man, original Gavis,
Yeah.
And first of all, I just wanted to say that how Dead Prez affected me, and I've been rapping since 2005, and I was, man, how I experienced Dead Prez was amazing, because how I got brothers like M1 and Stickman as a young cat who grew up on horrorcore. And horrorcore is that particular kind of rap whereby, like, it's, well, generally anti-African, even though it's done by Africans. It'll talk about murdering ourselves or killing our own people, And when I heard Dead Prez, I heard the first song I ever heard was I Have a Dream Too, which was Stickman, banging on the system. And I was like, I've never heard that before. I had never heard anyone say things that were against the cause of the contradictions, things that were against the system in which we were living. All I knew was that I was the problem and I had to get rid of myself, or you were the problem and I had to get rid of you, mom or dad or somebody, right? But when I heard Dead Prez for the first time, it was the first time ever hearing pro-Black rap music. And I know it might sound crazy to say pro-Black rap because rap is supposed to be Black, but yeah, it's colonialism. So I found it extreme. I thought Dead Prez was a really amazing thing. I discovered Dead Prez late, actually in 2009. I was in 11th grade. So my whole diet had been, reactionary kind of music, and in terms of hip hop. And then when I discovered them, I was like, okay, this is new. So Dead Prez saw me get introduced to Chairman Omali Yeshitela. This OG. His name is Hell B. He's a big brother here. He's these brothers were organizing hip hop sessions. We call them sessions here in South Africa, and he liked me. He was like, okay, brother, you freestyle, you're always battling, but sit down, let me give this to you. And I heard Wolves after I Had a Dream Too, and I was like, what the hell's going on? when I heard Wolves, I was amazed, because I thought, like, what movie is this? What clip was this taken from? Is that like, wow, that must be some hectic movie. I mean, you can't have words like that on hip hop or media, right? And fast forward, I went to university, and a brother, introduced me to YouTube and said, no, brother, actually in 2012, Dead Prez actually is not. These guys are not just rappers, and Chairman Omali actually is not an actor. It's a revolutionary. He's a revolutionary, and I was shocked. I was like, okay, I'd never seen that before. I was amazed by how he actually had inspired these young brothers who are powerful MCs to actually replicate and become revolutionary catalysts to replicate people like Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, at the very best of them, And that was what African internationalism was doing. It was creating all these Banshee Carters and Mama Winnie Mandelas and Robert Savukas all around us. And I really would like to appreciate the chairman for that, because that's been powerful work. And I want to, big up Dead Prez for real, man, because as an artist, we are able to reach a lot of people. So if we reach a lot of people with the right message, then goddamn. So I want to, okay, yeah, Uhuru come, right?
Uhuru. So I want to say this. The first place we ever touched down on the continent was in South Africa. So we came to Joburg, right? I don't even remember the year. It has to be the year 2000, probably the 2000, around 2000 or 2001. Completely changed my life. Okay, what we began to know more than anything, we went to a place called Orlando West, right? And in that, and we were also in Soweto as well.
Oh yeah.
But what happened was that we met artists who were rapping in English, and we said, look, man, fuck this colonial language. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Rap in your tongue.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I just want to say, you as an artist, you know, I want to ask you, how important, you know, is hip hop where you are now to the revolution, to the movement, and yeah, just, you know, as an artist.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, Baba M1. You know, as an artist, I think hip hop is a tool. You know, is a tool that can be used. I remember there's a quote that you shared as Dead Prez from Mama Asada, and it said that hip hop is like a knife. You know, you can stab your brother with it, or you can, you know, cook some cabbage and cook food for your brother. You know, so that's how I view hip hop. I view hip hop as a tool, and that's due to your teachings, Brother Matulu. Your teachings were that, you know, forget this whole praise of hip hop as an, you know, idol. You know, just don't praise hip hop. Praise what hip hop came from. Praise who hip hop came from, which is the African working class. You don't save hip hop. You save the people that created hip hop. Then we're gonna have hip hop forever. You know, so that's how I view it, comrade.
Yeah. Brother Timmhotep, or Chairman, do you have anything that you'd like to say or add to this conversation?
Just that this brother in Folkville and in the townships, you know, that he uses hip hop. I mean, he drags out the sound system and what have you, and it gives the message, you know, he organizes, uses it as a recruiting and organizing tool. He does that, you know, and as I said, right there in the townships. And you won't see the freedom, what they call themselves, the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, and Malema. You won't see them in the townships. We are in the townships, and this comrade is using hip hop as an instrument to organize and you know, educate the masses of people right there. So, yeah.
Awesome. Timmhotep.
Brother Asa, you know, we came into this out of I'm an African. And I know what it meant for me in Brooklyn, New York, to hear that song, being of, you know, West Indian descent, and feel this connection to my people. You in Azania, what was it like for you to hear this as an African person on the continent and hear these brothers from miles and miles away affirming their connection to you?
Powerful question, comrade Tim. I want to say, big brother, you know, I appreciate that question. It was, I felt like a part of me that was lost, I had found it. You know, in fact, actually, let me just say this, that's how a lot of African people in South Africa, that's how on the continent, actually, that's what we are looking for. And we usually don't find it on the mainstream, right? Growing up and whatever. But when we hear something like this, when we hear a brother in the US saying, I'm an African, God damn. We're like, they want to be here?
Yes.
So that's how I felt. As an African, I felt, right on. You know, let me tell you this, comrade. I felt like I actually understood myself better when I heard my family saying that. When I heard my family saying, I'm an African, I was like, oh, I guess I am too. Because colonialism will teach you not to be one, right? But when you see the people and you see the beauty in them, and they're telling you that you're beautiful, then you realize, damn, they're beautiful because you and them are one, you know? Yeah.
Uhuru. I want to share a story.
I'd say it like that, man. But I don't know. I wanted. Okay. Yeah, I want to say this also, Chairman. I wanted to say that Dead Prez is actually the first hip hop act to set up hip hop in South Africa in terms of like shows and things like that. You know, the entire formalization of hip hop in South Africa. That's what my elders told me. Yes, sir.
Awesome. We came And they had organized a show for us in Joburg.
Go ahead,
And
brother. Yes, sir.
And we found out that the price for the show was more than a month's rent to be in the show. And there was all these Africans, brothers and sisters outside of the fence, more outside of the fence than inside the fence, right? So from on the stage, I remember it was packed, it was hot.
Yes, sir.
But as soon as we started to play I'm an African, we called out to the brothers and sisters. They stormed the fence, broke the barriers, stormed into the arena, and came and did I'm an African with us. It was the most amazing performance of that song I've ever done in my life. And thank you and your spirit and your brothers and sisters and comrades for making that memory happen. I'm gonna find that and post that and send that around to people. I know you may have been too young to have gone through that, but I'm amazed that what we had done is still effective today. So Uhuru for that. Yeah. This can be a roundtable discussion. I don't want to monopolize, Chairman. If you'd like to ask questions, I know this comrade is a member of the Uhuru Movement. Maybe you'd like to talk about the work.
Yeah, he's the Secretary General of a party in South Africa. The leader is the Comrade Tafari, and he's also the Secretary General. Tafari is the Director of Organization for our work in Africa. And so this young brother is very potent. And, he led the demonstration during the issue around George Floyd, at the U.S. Embassy, he was there. And, we did work educating the masses of people around the colonial virus because it was very difficult. People didn't want to do the mask and a lot of other stuff because at the time they didn't see the evidence of its effect. Though right now, I think it's South Africa and Egypt has the highest incidence of colonial virus on the continent. But as I said, this brother, he's an organizer, he's a rapper, and he uses rap, to do the organizing. So, yeah.
I wanna offer because we have to move this program forward and it's getting thick. There's some important things that are about to happen. Brother Asa, give me 8 to 16 bars right now. Come on, the world is listening.
Right on. All right. Raise your middle finger to John Van Riebeck. Enslaved all of us niggas with guns. Now we are back. Rounding up all the crackers like Jews in Germany. Straight shots that turn whitey's blue eyes to burgundy. It's not racism if we also killing the black. Middle class and politicians duct taped in the back. Organization preempts the urge to simply react. And that's what the hell we need since we live in the shacks.
Look.
Yeah.
Look. Okay, so I'm sending you the track, man. We're gonna do this song, We're gonna make more of this revolutionary culture.
Right on.
Done deal.
Right
done
on.
Deal. Look, I just have to usher this conversation because and I'm serious about that. Let's make some stuff.
Right.
Chairman, hook us up, please. What we're gonna do is I want to talk about Africa, and we had been talking about the cover. Many people think the cover of Let's Get Free is from South Africa, but it was from the effect of South Africa. It was the Children's Rebellion that happened in Botswana. But many people think that that's South Africa, and occupied Azania. The question of Africa is important. And I think raising the question of Africa has been one of the most important things that Chairman Omali Yeshitela has done. I like to move into a next piece of content. And Chairman, I am remiss because I do not have the letter from the Oxford Union people to read.
Do we have it up? Do we have access to it? Comrade Akile? Here it is.
Good.
Yeah. Okay.
So read, it said, Dear Mr. Yeshitela, I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to extend an invitation to speak at Oxford Union in our forthcoming term. skip down. With a lifetime of fighting for freedom for African people, you are globally inspiring. You are a globally inspiring champion for racial equality and socialism. Your vision has been crucial to shaping the theory of African internationalism and indeed, I missed it, and indeed, the social movement worldwide. This timely debate would be hugely benefited by your irreplaceable perspective and input. So the video we're about to see is from Oxford Union, the same place that Malcolm spoke, and Chairman will speak to that and why this was important. But I think this particular piece of work has been instrumental in the minds of a lot of people today. So right now we're going to go into Chairman Omali Yeshitela on Africa at Oxford Union.
I now look to Omali Yeshitela to continue the case for the proposition.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I have only recently come here from the United States of America. And that being the case, I cannot stand before this august body without prefacing my statement in defense of closer unity of Africa, without stating first my unconditional solidarity with President Maduro and the government and people of Venezuela, who are currently under attack, savage attack, by the declining world hegemon of the United States. I think it's absolutely necessary to say that coming from that country, and especially looking at the fact that the United States travels the world preening, presenting itself as the guardian of democracy and the rights of the peoples around the world, where the reality is that Africans who are colonized in the United States represent at least half of the largest prison population in the world. There are more Africans in prison in the United States than there are people in Djibouti or in Equatorial Guinea. And so we find it very difficult, also recognizing that by their own estimates, it would take 228 years for the income of Africans colonized in the United States to equal that of the colonial white population. So it is absolutely necessary for me to stand here today before you expressing total opposition to the United States government terroristic actions against the people of Venezuela with an attempt to starve the people into opposition to their government. Mr. President, brothers and sisters, comrades, it is also necessary for us to say that this question of a closer union with Africa, or between Africans, or within Africa, is not a purely academic question, despite the fact that this debate is occurring within the pinnacle of bourgeois academia. That there is a natural, historical inclination for Africa and African people to be united, which is one of the reasons I am here today. The truth of the matter is that this discussion about the unity of Africa, union of Africans, started much earlier than any incursion, as it might be characterized, of China or the Trump administration into Africa. The reality is that Africa came under assault some 600 years ago when Portugal first came and captured African people and initiated the process that would begin capitalism and would establish and consolidate the identity of Europeans in the world. It is a reality that capitalism rests upon a foundation of African slavery. Africans were first capital. And in order for this to occur and to last, it was absolutely necessary to keep African people divided so that we could not resist this horrible incursion on Africa that continues up to now. I think it's important to be able to say that. I think that we have to say that we've seen example after example by African people to unite. We've seen what used to be warring tribes in this geographical terrain that we occupy at this moment, able to achieve a sense of sameness that people refer to as nations, founded on a common economy that came from slavery and colonialism. This is the basis of the unity that we see. If there is a problem with the European Union today, it is because the foundation, the economic foundation of capital, of imperialism, is being stressed by the struggles of the oppressed peoples of the world to take back their resources from this parasite that bleeds Africa, that bleeds the world, that bleeds Afghanistan, that bleeds the people of Yemen who are dying by the thousands even as we have this discussion. This is the basis of a Brexit. It can't stand together anymore because the host is rejecting the parasite, and it's creating crisis throughout Europe and throughout the imperialist world. I think it's necessary, brothers and sisters, to say that there has been a natural trajectory by African people for closer union. We know that we're talking about having this discussion in part because in 1884-85, Europeans sat at a table in Berlin, Germany, not a single African there, and carved up Africa into the territories that we now sometimes call countries and illogically refer to as nations. Africans didn't do that. It was Europe that did that. It was Europe and imperialism that required Africa to be divided so that the resources of Africa, both human and material, could come and pave the streets in London and grow the buildings in Amsterdam and bring clean water to New York, while the streets in Sierra Leone are not paved. And the people in Sierra Leone do not have clean water. And there's no national electric grid there. It is necessary to keep Africa divided by European imperialism and by all the imperialism in order to continue to suck the resources from Africa so that cell phones could exist here, so that Steve Jobs and the others could achieve some great notoriety from the coltan that comes from Congo, where Leopold killed at least 12 to 15 million Africans in order to conquer and keep Africa in the condition it's in today. We talk about a united Africa and African Union because of what European imperialism has done to Africa to keep us divided. We know it's true. We saw 100 years or so ago, Marcus Garvey organized the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities Leagues that stretched across the globe. More than 11 million African people everywhere were connected to this. Africa for Africans, at home and abroad. That was the cry. Not Africans for Nigerians that didn't even exist until the British created it in 1915. And Flora Shaw, the mistress who would become the wife of Frederick Lugard,
came up with the name nigger area, not this false national consciousness that has been imposed on Africans around the world. So that when the Portuguese found shrimp on West Africa and then named it for the Portuguese word for shrimp, Cameroon, it is not true that they are shrimp despite the fact that the people call themselves Cameroonians today. It is a false national consciousness. The false national consciousness that created the American Negro, that created the Black Brit, and the Afro-Swede. We are one Africa, one nation, and we must have closer union. But in order for that to happen, it has to be a revolutionary union. The Organization of African Union, created on May 25th, 1963 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, was part of an effort to circumvent efforts by Kwame Nkrumah to build a single union of African states. And instead, we come up with an Organization of African Union that codified the colonial borders that were created by Europe in 1884 and 85. We have to be able to break out of this, but it's going to take revolution in order to do this. African revolution in order to do this. African revolution that will destroy imperialism and the world economy that's responsible for the growing immiseration of the masses of people around the world. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Uhuru. Uhuru. Uhuru. It gets no clearer. I think that's crystal clear. You have just heard Chairman Omali Yeshitela presenting his side of toward African unity. Timmhotep, your response.
I think in today's parlance, we would call that talking that talk. Talking that real talk. Talking that real talk. And I'm gonna be brief about this, but I want people to seek out that speech themselves and research what he's talking about and what he's contextualizing for you. One of the things that's really appealing about one, Dead Prez, two, the chairman himself, is that everything that is mentioned, it's not mystical, magical, whatever, it's real life history you can research yourself and then put into a context that is about your own personal liberation and the liberation of the people. So powerful stuff. And talking that talk and speaking truth to power. If you look at the faces in that room, that's another reason I want people to look it up. Look at the faces in that room and see how different people react to that. So I say rule that. That's it.
Thank you, brother. I think that's incredible coming from you as a writer, as a cultural curator, because people need to hear you reinterpret these that and also direct them towards that particular speech. Something that happened to me recently was Brother Isaiah Thomas, number 11. The Isaiah Thomas got in contact with me and after hearing that speech and said he needed to speak with Chairman Omali Yeshitela, and by the way, that happened. So these are the type of connections that are happening because of that. Anybody who's tuning in right now, this is a celebration of 20 years of Let's Get Free, and this is why you're hearing what you're hearing. Let's Get Free meant that then and means that now. It's bigger than hip hop and has been always bigger than the music. And so thank you, Tim. I want to bring into this conversation right now somebody your friend and mine. I hope you also stay in this conversation and narrate this with us, because this is going to get into the the meat, the nooks and crannies of the album Let's Get Free. Anybody who knows him knows that he's probably one of the most sincere people that you can meet. A man of his word. I ain't even gonna belabor it. Grammy nominated Sean C and LV is who, when you hear them as a group, that's, I think of Sean C and LV, but Sean C stands on his own. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades, welcome to this 20-year Let's Get Free conversation that couldn't happen without him. Sean C. Sean C, you there?
I'm here. Can you see me?
Good. I can see you.
Yeah. What's
How
up,
you feeling?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm inspired.
Yeah.
It's just really, really interesting. Like, just, it's emotional. You know what I mean? Going back through everything and even just learning things that I didn't know, even though I was there for during the album. But like, the chairman, just being such a figure. He's such a huge figure in my mind. You know what I mean? And just from you guys and hearing certain things, like I just learned that Nigeria was nigga area. I didn't even.
But blow, it's crazy, right?
Yeah. Knowing that I have that brother as a comrade, it means a lot.
Yeah. Well, when you heard now that you've put the face with and been able to connect that with making the album, literally you were there in the mastering sessions when we were taking the pieces and connecting them, and you heard Chairman Omali Yeshitela. I don't even have to ask, does it all make sense? I'm pretty sure it does, and I'm just happy that you're here today to be part of this conversation. I'm gonna jump right on in. Let me ask you, we met at Loud Records. I think I remember first meeting you. I walked into the Loud Records office. It was Lexington, 32nd and Lexington, in the same building that was Vibe was on top or below or whatever. And then so Vibe magazine, that is. and then I go up in Loud where we had recently signed a deal and we're working our way through the process of figuring out how to become recording artists. We had been recording, but not professionally. We had demos and we knew we had been rocking stages, but becoming a recording artist. And one day we walked, I think I remember this, walking into Loud Records, and as per Maddie and Scott, we were introduced to you. Do you remember that day?
Oh man, I don't remember that exact day. I don't remember that day.
What's your first recollection of Dead Prez?
Was Lord J coming in, hearing Root of All Evil, and and just kind of it felt natural, you know what I mean? Like just the camaraderie between them. And I know that you guys had your trepidations about what the label would be, and of course what an A&R person would be. And for me, I was just really, really hungry because it was like I had gone through a lot. I mean, which I was going through cancer at the same time. There was a lot of things. So I had a complete plan of what I was gonna do while I was in that building and in that office. And you guys, it was like the universe bringing you guys, putting me together with you. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because my favorite groups are NWA and Public Enemy. Those are my favorite groups. And I grew up with Olambe Brad's kids. You know, so it's like we all grew, Central Park 5, all of those things those are my people that I grew up with. We all lived in those buildings. So I knew certain things that were just inherent in me, but hip hop wise, I was always, just a hip hop fan and always gravitated to political hip hop. And when you guys came in to play, it was just a natural, it just made sense for me. You know what I mean?
So we were there. I remember, the Wu-Tang mob. The mob was there. The Licks were there. Mm-hmm. I remember when Pun got signed. Talk to the people about kind of like where we register in that, like how was working with us the same or different than working with many of the artists that you work with?
You guys, so we were working on the Big Pun record. You guys got signed at the same time Pun got signed. There were 3 acts that got signed. It was Dead Prez, Big Pun, and ICYMI, who was a rapper from Queens. All 3 of you guys got signed at the same time. So that was like the new regime after Mobb Deep, Wu-Tang, Raekwon, Sadat X. This was the next generation, and I was the new A&R at the label. I had already finished Big Pun's record, which was an incredible success. It was a great record. And now it was Dead Prez's turn. But you guys were working for a long time before we got the release. So it was just finding the footing of where Dead Prez fit in the schedule and how we could bring them out in the best way possible, where we can get the most eyes, the most ears. But without, the thing about Loud was with Steve, Rich, Maddie, and Scott, they never wanted to interfere with the creative process of an artist. So if you were signed to Loud, you had creative control. You could do basically whatever you wanted, and no one would interfere with it. So it was a perfect label for you guys, and we were fortunate enough to sign talent that knew what their vision was and didn't need as much cultivating as or cookie cut. You know, we weren't a cookie cutter label. It wasn't like, okay, we're gonna sign this guy and turn him into this, you know, turn him into a political rapper, or turn him into a ladies man, or turn him into, you know, whatever it is. Dead Prez was what Dead Prez was, and it took a minute to get the footing. Just like any other artist, you grow. You know what I mean? You learn. Like I listened to, even on the album on Let's Get Free, you listen to like the songs that I know that we recorded earlier compared to the songs that were recorded later, like say like Be Healthy compared to like We Want Freedom, which was one of the earlier songs. Propaganda was one of the earlier songs. And you can hear the rawness and the learning if you really pay attention to it, like as far as like how to make records, and then what, and your voice, and getting your voice, and knowing that, okay, we're political, but knowing that we're gonna get to, we're learning more on how to articulate ourselves to in layman's terms, you know, like you guys spoke about earlier. And that happened a lot. Like bring Prodigy in, because Stick was a huge Prodigy fan and was very influenced by P a lot, and bringing him in there's a verse that we can't find, but for that skit that he did, and yeah, that was it. And for me, being a producer, I came at it with the mentality of a producer. That's what I did already. I just was A&R in the A&R, but I came in it as a producer.
Yeah. Look, I gotta say this is a surprise that's happened on the screen. We have a surprise guest. I don't know if the world can see what's happening right now, but I see what's happening. I see a mango getting ate. I see a G on the screen. And Sean, we gonna interrupt you for a second, because I'm not sure how long we have with Queen E. 20th, we're doing our 20-year celebration of Let's Get Free. This couldn't happen without look. We met this sister in Brooklyn. Me and Stick walking up Fulton Street. She had on a pair of Clarks. I remember the day. She had Wallabies on, right? Big fan. To the world, I'd like to introduce everybody to our sister. I would love somebody who has nurtured and helped grown who Dead Prez can be in the world. We've toured, and I've learned greatly from her. And right now I want to introduce and bring to this stage Erykah Badu.
Peace and love, y'all. How's everybody? How y'all feeling?
So blessed.
Blessed, definitely.
I'm blessed too.
I want to ask you how you feeling right now, and just add to the conversation for as long as you would like. You know, just do as you will. Just talk to us about the world and how you feeling.
I think it all is as it shall be. this point. I've just been watching us evolve from my observation deck and participating and can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Okay. Contributing when I can, as my heart says fit. And I try to stay in tune with nature. I think that keeps me in the right place. I'm so very proud of you, Mutulu, because you're consistent, you're deliberate, you're earnest, your compassion and your love for your people is peculiarly intelligent. You have an intelligence that is linked to nature. I will always honor our friendship and the day that we met and all of the times that I was honored to be in your space. All of the things I learned from your experiences, and, from the Bahamas to Brooklyn to Dallas to everywhere we've been together to let the world know what the world needed to know at that given point in time. I'm honored to be here with you.
I want to say that it's bigger than hip hop, and what our relationship is bigger than music. We are family. Our families are connected. My daughters. Stick and Afia are family, and who are blessed in this as well, and have their blessings inside this. This means a lot, and I think people feel that when they've seen our work together, in whether it was the White House or the Rock House and Uncle Sam's the motherfucker Pushing Man, or Worldwide Underground, the work that we've done. I just want to say, what makes you gravitate towards the real shit, towards being, and you have to be authentically you, but it's a sacrifice. What does it mean to be an artist who sees the bigger picture and who's not going to deviate from that picture?
I guess a wealth of experiences that help me to stay on point. One is how they made me, whoever they are. How they made me. I always knew that it was something that was not right, and I've been in unrest since I was in the first grade about it. And I would look around and see how my family lived, and knew that we had to be out of this situation, not just me, but all of us. Yes. Not some, all. And then looked at my grandmother, who worked on her job for 20 years and was still sitting in the same spot. Looked at my little brother who sold work on the block and could make more than she made in 15 years in 2 weeks. But that still didn't connect the dots. So knowing and learning that without the change in legislation, then there are no changes. We can talk, we can march, we can walk, we can read, we can fuss, we can disagree, but if there are not any changes in legislation, then there's no real change. And there is a big sacrifice in that kind of thing, because when you start messing with the demands of money, economy, then you are a threat.
That's right.
I have children, and I'm petrified sometimes by some of the stances I take and some of the things that I say. And I'm very careful, and I've had those talks with you, and I've been afraid for your life. And, it's the mother in me that makes me protect you in that way. But, when it ain't right, it ain't right, until we all free, nothing's happening. You know, there's no movement without the full movement, without all of us moving. If everybody ain't rowing, then we're not getting too far. So it's a lot of metaphors, but it got to be in writing. These people built this thing 600 years ago and it's still standing. You know, we have to really start to organize in a different kind of way and look forward in a different kind of way. I mean, we don't even look 5 years ahead, much less 10 or 20. I think if we start planning 10 to 20 years ahead and moving with intelligence, it's either that or burn the bitch down. You know, it's one or the other. And if we want to be here in comfort,
it's both of them. It's all of the above. All of the above.
you know, but for right now, I mean, I think to bring some of the most learned minds, I'll use the word learned, and wise minds together who've gone through this thing and who've seen this thing. We need to counsel and sit together and figure out a plan. Maybe a 20-year plan. We start there, you know, because it's going to start with those two parents who want to have a child. And then we take them through a 7-step program, economics being the foundation, and then health and wellness, and then science and agriculture, and then self-awareness and relationship counseling, and how to treat one another, and how to treat children, and how to build something. And we start there. We take those two parents who want to have a family, and we start with them. They have a child, and take that child through that same program. We don't have to reinvent the wheel or anything. We can go through the school systems that we have that are already evolved, the Marcus Garvey schools and the scientific schools all over the nation. Take those schools and get those leaders to solicit 100 families who want to have a child. After taking them through that program, this is just an idea. Then you build a program within that school with those 7 tiers. By the time that child is 2 or 3 and they've spent that time with their 2 parents, then you put them into that system. And then by the 5th year, we do an evaluation and we build on the program. We stay technologically sound. We stay ahead in technology because it's going to be building and moving and growing and building and moving and growing.
Yes.
We stay ahead. And by the 10th year, we kind of know what we got. By that 18th year, you have the first graduating class of the Sun children. Those children will be ready to build a Black Star Line.
Love it.
Because we are so settled and comfortable here that we're afraid to move. It has to start with that couple who wants to have a family and can look to the future. I'm 50 years old this year. I'll be 70 years old by the time that program is complete, and I'm with it. I'm willing to be patient, willing to see it, if we're gonna stay here.
Right. There's a lot.
But, yeah.
I want to ask you, I want to do 2 things and probably more. I want to, Sean C is in here and I want to invite him in this conversation. We have Chairman Omali Yeshitela who's here. I want to first ask you, Let's Get Free. What would be a song on Let's Get Free that you gravitate toward, or that you just can say, hey, I fuck with that?
It's one whole piece to me. You know, I don't ever listen to Let's Get Free and break it up like 99 Cent. I couldn't sing it. But I really resonate with y'all schools. And
they can't teach this shit.
Hip hop, the anthem. And one that's dear to me is probably Be Healthy. I mean, just the whole thing is it's a little movie. It's very atmospheric. It's cinema. And it set the stage for. I mean, when I came out and then you met you guys, it gave me a better idea of what I was saying, what I was trying to do. You know, I could see the imagery a lot better after I met you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Chairman Omali, would you like to enter this conversation or say anything to Sister Erykah Badu?
I think I'm gonna call Tyrone.
Chairman, but you can't use my phone, though. I'm just gonna let you know now.
You changed the phone. Yeah, I just really appreciate you know, having you here, and I want you, sister, to go to blackpowerblueprint.org. Blackpowerblueprint.org. You're right. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We're here 20 years after Let's Get Free, and my introduction to M1 and Stick, to Kanum and Mutulu, was trying to make this revolution happen. And my objective was to complete the work, the whole revolution of the 1960s that had been destroyed by the United States government, people assassinated. There's still people in prison from that time who, you know, et cetera. And so when I met M and Stick, that's what I was doing, and that's what brought us together, trying to overturn this relationship we have with this oppressive system. And for me, the work that they have done with this album reflects that. That's why we can be talking about this 20 years later and its significance right now.
Right.
You look at that album and the question of the state and the question of licking the blade and they school. You know, I mean, all of that is something that's demanding recognition by our people right now. So millions of people are out in the streets, not only in this country, but around the world, based on what happened to that African man in Minneapolis. And I think that the soundtrack for that could be Let's Get Free. The soundtrack for what's happening out there, these struggles, the resistance, could be Let's Get Free. So I'm glad to see you are here. And one of the things that's important to me is to see conscious cultural workers, you know, people who are really conscious of being on a mission, and that their art helps the masses of our people to see the future, to help design the future, to understand what it is that we are. That's what revolutionary artists do, you know? And so I'm just impressed by that. And I've been watching you for a while, just in terms of what I could see of you from my vantage point. Usually that's been through some, you know, some corporate media outlet or what have you. But I've been impressed. And there's a sister who is a part of our work in Philadelphia. We have a furniture store in Philadelphia, and she is an artist as well, and sounds just like Erykah Badu. And that's it's really amazing. When I first heard her sing, you know, that was what came to mind. I just think it's important to know that there's a sort of a colony, if you will, of progressive and revolutionary cultural workers who, you know, trying to affect the liberation of our people. I just wanted to say that. And also, it's bigger than hip hop, and Africans are everywhere. We are one people stretched across the globe. We've been forcibly dispersed at gunpoint. We always say that they like to talk about this country being a nation of immigrants. Well, that's a lie in the first place, because it's not a nation, it's a prison of nations. You're talking about the largest prison population in the world being in this country, and Africans constituting 13% of the population. There are more than 1 million people in Africa, more in prison, more than in some countries. Africans are in prison. And we're the only group that didn't come here looking for a better way of life, but lost a better way of life as a consequence of having come here. And you could say the same thing about they laws as we can say about they schools. We can say the same thing about they legislation as we can say about they schools. I mean, they have established an oppressive system that has maintaining this relationship between the oppressed and the oppressor. That's what it does. And I'm just glad that you're here. Glad to have an opportunity to see you and to know that you have this relationship with these incredible artists that we're in this Zoom room with together.
Uhuru. I'm not gonna keep you forever, but I do want to ask you: is there anything you'd like to deliver, or thing you'd like to say? Or Sean, I want to include you as well. You're here. If you want to ask a question of E, but before you go, is there anything you want to say to the world, or that you're working on, or that that you'd like to say at this moment?
Not that I can think of right off the top, but I think I said it, and
yeah,
I'm with you, Chairman. No, I just be brave and keep working, and
Uhuru, come back. Yeah, we're winning. We are winning. You know that. We are winning. Yeah. Uhuru.
Give respect to Erykah. Time that he probably doesn't remember, but
Can we do something with the sound? Because I'm having a problem hearing Sean C.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, the first time that I did meet her was at Stick's son's naming ceremony. And that's when I really kind of understood how much of a family organization it was, and I felt honored that Stick even invited me. We've spoken about it in the past, like, you guys are my brothers. It's more than just me being around as the guy from the label. Like, we became family, and me being invited to that, and then seeing that, it was a learning experience, and seeing her there, and then knowing that she helped deliver, ICYMI, it was amazing. And I remember calling Stick, and he's like, "No, she's still in labor. She's still in labor." 24 hours. It was like 48 hours. It was a long, very long time. Just to give her that respect, and I've been watching from afar.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, ICYMI is 19 years old. And shout out to Stick Afia for that labor, and Nkosi for being here as well. So I just want to say that, and E, I love you. And thank you. Thank you.
I love you more. I love you back. I love you all.
Uhuru.
Okay. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Yeah.
Uhuru. Okay, so now you can stay on if you want, or you can, however you want to do.
Go to blackpowerblueprint.org. There is a plan. We've been working it for a while. Blackpowerblueprint.org.
Blackpowerblueprint.org.
Yes,
okay, I will do that.
Okay. Splendid. Yeah.
That's
Brother,
a real one.
thank you for having me.
I'm going to see you soon. We'll talk soon.
Okay. I don't know how to get off this, so.
They'll do it to you. Yeah, there you go. I love you. Talk soon.
I love you more.
All right.
That was a dope surprise, man.
Right. It was beautiful. Hey, you never know what's going to happen. Let's get free. So, Sean C.
Yes.
Talk to me about the nooks and crannies. We went in the studio. Tell me, how do we start? You kind of go in.
Okay, from what I know, we spoke about Police State. And Police State was the one of the first records that we played during the session, and I remember loving Police State, but also being a guy from the record label, knowing that it's like, wow, this is slow, like really slow. It's kind of down, like everything was down. It was dark, and was like, we want this to be our single, and having Maddie and Scott having to go to, because the mantra of the label was the artist has the control. So we have to go and say to Steve and Rich, this is their single. This is what they want to put out. So Steve always was like, all right, just go. I wanted I'm an African, because I felt like it spoke to a lot of, it had the energy, and it spoke. It was clear. It was clear cut, like how we spoke about before. It was in layman's terms of what it was. You guys had a strategy. You didn't want it. You didn't want to put out I'm an African first. So it worked out. And looking at 20 years later, like you said, Police State could be the single for someone right now.
Right now. Yeah.
We've spoken about it before, about how, it's about timing. And, there are people saying, oh, this album is more relevant now than it was before, but it's not. It's just it's always been relevant.
Right on.
Right.
Right on.
Things have not changed. These issues that we're going through, they're not new issues. We just have a different technology now, and they're able to see more of what's going on. So in essence, yeah, it is more relevant because now just there's something else that has been added to it that lets you see the relevance of it, but it's always been here. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And from a perspective of like making the record, hip hop was the single, but we didn't have that till the end.
That's right. And I'm not gonna give that away yet. I wanna go and play a song. We came to New York from Tallahassee with a demo tape that we had like a few copies of. We had no money. We were sleeping all together, and there were like a collective of 8 of us out of Tallahassee. We were called the Heads from the Attic because we made the music in the attic in a house that we rented in Tallahassee. So all those guys were part of our journey. We journeyed to Brooklyn. We rented this in Brownsville, in Ocean Hill. We got into the slumlord who let us all stay in this room, and then we went out in the streets and we were like hunting with this demo tape. Who can we play it for? We wanted to play it for Wu-Tang. We ended up meeting Lord Jamar, and we stayed in Lord Jamar's house again, eating little crumb cakes and whenever we could find them, existing virtually off nothing. And he helped us reproduce some of those songs. I got to say that Stick is the producer of Dead Prez. Abu and Tahir are producers, but of Dead Prez. We were a collective, but in our music, Stick was the producer. I have an ear for music and sound, and we will work together, but Stick put his hands on that ASR 10 and made that thing jump out the room. And he is the producer of also Bigger Than Hip Hop. A lot of people don't know that, but I need to say that early. Right now, I'd like to play a song called We Want Freedom. Now, this song was one of the songs that came earlier in the session, and it kind of explains itself. So, ladies and gentlemen, 20 years of Let's Get Free. This one is called We Want Freedom. Uhuru, yes. Yeah.
That song was originally called Fuck the System, too. That was originally.
It was. And
why y'all mess up a good title like that?
You know why? Because we wanted the demand to be when you see the album title, you wanted to see like the African People's Socialist Party platform. We want freedom. Like the Black Panther Party platform. We want freedom. And so again, the album had rough edges, but we wanted to make it sophisticated in a certain kind of way. I want to be conscious of our time. I want to bring Timmhotep in here because I know he had a couple of things he wanted to add to this conversation.
Yeah, man.
But I just got to say that song was produced by Tahir, RBG, and Abu, who are master craftsmen and far ahead of their time. And it's called We Want Freedom. We want to say something, Timmhotep?
So we've been talking a lot about the messages on the record, but I think what we can't just glaze over is like the music aspect of it, because not only was this a very unique record in that people weren't talking about stuff you guys were talking about in the way you were talking about it, but like to the ear, it was a bugged out record. Like it's got some down south shit to it. There's definite Tallahassee in there. There's a little bit of New York boom bap in it, right? Like, so Sean C. Matulu, tell me about like putting this record together from a musical standpoint. Like, shout out Head Rush, they are amazing. Shout out Stick, always amazing. Like, that's the other thing. Like, y'all singing on this shit. Tell me, y'all using guitars the way people never really used them. Y'all got Last Poets on it. Tell me a little bit about the crafting the soundscape of this record.
Yeah, Sean, so you could talk a little bit about it. I just have to say that we again, somewhere in between NWA and PE. We knew we wanted to have the depth and layers of Dr. Dre, but we wanted to have the impact of Hank Shockley. You know, we wanted to be unforgettable in that way, and it took a lot. You know, you know, it wasn't like Tahir came and said, "Here it is," and just and gave it to us. We were like, "No, it needs this and it needs this." You know, we were all part of that sound, and I have to say that Sean C was very instrumental in helping us hear better at how to do it and how many more takes we needed to do to make it sound the way we wanted to sound. Sean, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, you know, we always say, you know, in between PE and NWA, but I think the X factor in the sound was the Southern aspect of it, because that's what separated them from those two groups. So the Southern music is more of a feeling and more musical. So that's where the musical instruments come in. That's where the live instrumentation comes in. You got the angst from PE, and then you got the street from NWA. But then you get guitar because, and then you have, you know, you have a Miami feel because it's the South, and Tahir is always amped. Like if you know Tahir, his energy is that, you know. So Tahir and Abu they were masters at figuring out that ASR and creating bass lines with just a sound, like making his own sound. Like, Tahir was really, really underrated producer, and I wish he would have been able to do more things actually outside of Dead Prez as well. So that was part of the sound, and that was for me too. Like I learned a lot, even just we learned off of each other. My thing was always the drums got to be banging. So I always, the drums gotta be cracking, you know, and that was when we went in and I did the drums over for Happiness. Some people loved it, some because they were used to the original version of it. But yeah, that was my thing, and we had engineers that were great at form, like Blair Wells, who was really, he was really instrumental in helping us with the sequencing and all of the interludes and the way that the songs would go into each other and the edits.
Yes.
You know, I know you don't want to talk about hip hop. I just want to say one thing. It's not about the content, but hip hop, like that song, the way it sounds, the way the main version was actually happened in the clean edits. So all of those extra sounds weren't in there. If we wouldn't have had to make a clean version of that song, it probably wouldn't have sounded the way that it sounds as the main version, like the fake records, and then the extra little sound effects that we were putting in to kind of cover up the curses that we ended up keeping as like the main version of the song, you know. So, a lot of that stuff happened later, you know, and hip hop was the last song that we did. But Tahir, you know, one thing that I bit from Tahir was always was like the kick on top of the cymbal. I know it's some small. Like on Be Healthy, I was like, like he was really dope at doing that. So yeah, that's
let me back up on Be Healthy. Check it. So Dead Prez was signed in 1996. We didn't know what was gonna happen. The album came out in 2000, so those 4 years was a lot. In the middle of that, we were trying to figure out our way. We made this 3-song tape, we called the Little Red tape, which was a formation of like Mao's Little Red book, which is part of the political education that we were reading in the Uhuru Movement. We were reading from Mao and Lenin and Marx, you know, but from an African internationalist point of view. So we made this Little Red tape, and on that you had Happiness, you had I think these are the times at Novus Ordo Seclorum. Well, on that, we ended up making a 3-part video for that, and in that video, if you look, at one point we had this dystopian, super 8mm concept, again masterminded by Stick. At which, you know, not just a visionary in the music, but like of like how we see our music as well. So that this, like in this Super 8 footage, you see like us like in the last days, like going in a grocery store, taking the last we can take. Well, Prodigy came to that video shoot. And Prodigy stole I said my last bag of rice. He's in some camouflage. and he takes the rice and he bumps a dude on the way out who like supposed to be like a fake soldier, but we like the real soldiers. Fast forward to Prodigy on Be Healthy. We again produced by Head Rush. Be Healthy, again, like Erykah said, became an instrumental piece of, like, I mean, you know, it's cool to be a vegan these days, you know? You know, it's
you
cool.
talk about being vegan 20 years ago and people looked like you had two heads. I
Real
was saying,
talk.
I was like, I'm gonna get a salad. My man was like, you need a salad?
Right, right. So, you know, shout out to Supernova Slum, shout out to Queen Afua, Heal Thyself Center, shout out to those places in Brooklyn who were helping heal us at the time that we were making that, and Stick, one of the most phenomenal stories about Stick's turnaround in his life is about, you know, him taking hold of his health, and even has led to where he is with RBG Fit Club to this day. But we crafted that record thinking that we could kind of add this flavor that was Tahir, Head Rush, Abu, and bring like this kind of Queens, this Mobb Deep on top of it. What did you think about the idea when you thought about P rapping on Be Healthy? And most people never heard it, but Sean C, you've heard it and you were there when it happened. What do you think?
Yeah, it made complete sense to me because I was close to both. I was close to it, so I knew that it would work for P, and you guys were masters at finding that balance. So it was like, you know, it was almost like when the mom does the airplane to get you to eat the food. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's Prodigy, and so that's gonna make it interesting to somebody that doesn't want to hear anything about vegetarian food, or, you know, or being a vegan or something like that. So that's something that you guys were really masters at, figuring out how to put everything in layman's terms for the people and make it cool. And I was listening to that song today, and it's just a good song. I mean, it comes down to the music, you know, being good first, and then the message, you know, the message is the most important, but to reach the most people, the music has to be good. And the music was as good as it could be, you know. And with Stick, and then Stick, we spoke about the end of the aggression, but then Stick singing, like you said, Tim, you know, you wouldn't expect, it's like Prodigy singing almost, you know what I mean? Like, and that was I think that was what came from being from the South as well. Just that there not being so many boundaries as being a New York artist. Sometimes we're very, very confined to just being like, we have to be hard and it's just boom bap. But when it comes down to it, when you're out, when you come from another place, you guys took Brooklyn, Tallahassee, North Carolina, all of that and put it together, you know?
Yeah. We're looking at pictures right now. See Lord Jamar. In this picture, you were beating cancer. And look, there's Quan. We in Jamaica here, and you know, we having good times, as you can see. In this studio session, you got Matt here, and wow, just amazing. So, you know, I just really have to say, like, those sessions formed my life. Prodigy was very well read, and his thinking was far outside of the box. I have to say, rest in peace for him, and he's sorely missed. I'm looking at the time right now, and I'm trying to be a good host. It's 10:24 on East EST. We're supposed to end this thing at 10:30, but I think we're going to run a little bit over. I want to have a roundtable discussion, but not until we talk about It's Bigger Than Hip Hop. So, you know, we had finished the album, so-called finished it, what we call turned it in, you know, to you and Matt and Scott and you know, LV was there, and you know, we have a listening room and Loud Records. Anybody remember the Loud listening room? You know, we would get in there together and play stuff. As a matter of fact, that's a place where we exchanged songs with Big Pun. That's how Stick ended up producing a track on Big Pun's album, because of that same listening room. Well, we would be in that listening room and listen to the whole album, and lo and behold, you know, we were sitting in our houses in Brooklyn, and we remember getting a call saying, look, you know, we just don't feel like you guys have, you know, the single. You got a dope album, but you don't have the single. And for me, I remember being in that same basement where Afia labored for 40 plus hours, and Badu helped to give birth to Yeshitela, and Stick had his ASR sat up in the closet, and he was messing around with the pitch wheel and some basic drums. And then I just remember, saying, one thing about music when it hit. I remember saying it's bigger than. I remember saying, oh, that's what they want. They want some head. I was doing it facetiously, very sarcastically over the thing. It literally was one of those things where we thought, let's laugh at this. They want this on the radio. And at this time, kind of like this Southern hip hop was inundating New York radio. So that's where like the double time rhyme pattern of it all kind of started to happen for me, which was like, I had done it, but I had not done it on our record officially. And that's how those words emerged from me listening to Bob Marley in the background, probably Stick playing Bob Marley. And I'm saying one thing about music, when it hit, you feel no pain. I literally transposed those lyrics into a rhyme style that worked for that, and Stick saying, oh. And I remember, I don't know if it was you or who we gave it to, but the next day we said, hey, what do you think about this? And I just remember the sentiment from the label being like, what? And I gotta tell you, we lightweight were about to throw the song away. We were not convinced. What was your when you first heard it's bigger than hip hop? What did you think?
So that day, I remember this vividly. That day, and I was like, I was going crazy. Like this is it, and y'all had that same reaction. Like really, like this is, and that's really how hit records happen. They're like the records that you don't put as much thought into sometimes, and I went to the office, and it was the way that I would test records. I went in the office the next day, and we had a listening room. The listening room, the famous listening room in Loud, was in the back of the office. We had these huge speakers back there, and I just turned that shit all the way up. And I wanted everybody to come in. I wanted to see what the reaction was. And I remember my boy Chef Low. I remember a bunch of people started coming back, because Chef was a big DP's advocate. He was in most. Well,
shout out Chef Low.
Chef Low, and everybody came back like, "Yo, what is this?" Like, yeah, this is it. This is blast off time. So now we knew we had one, and the rest is, the rest is it.
I want to shout out Brian Belichick for bringing that video to life with us. He had shot Juvenile's Ha, and we went in that same listening room, and we were listening. We went to Loud, and we were looking at reels about how to bring that song to life. And we saw the street grittiness of New Orleans and the teeth in the Ha video, and we were like, we want that. And so I got to say, that's shout out to Brian Belichick for being a part of making that come to life. Long story short, we added It's Bigger Than Hip Hop to the album, and even eventually talked about doing remixes for it, because it became a radio single. And let me tell you, I don't know if you remember this, but you brought in Juicy J. He did a remix. You remember that remix? We never put it. We never put it out.
I gotta drop Juicy J remix to hip hop. What y'all talking about right now? Y'all,
I don't know where that is.
Exactly. And then we also brought in Kanye West, and Kanye West did the version that ended up being on the album, and the hook that goes, "Ride with this if you love Tupac, bong bong, ride for this if you miss Big Papa." That is completely Kanye's writing. That's 100% his writing. And at that time, if we'd have thought about it, we'd have told him to say it. But he was insistent upon us saying it. So we went and said it. So I want to say it is like, again, I want to open this as a roundtable conversation. But Sean, you want to say anything or bring stuff up about, like, yeah.
Okay, what were you gonna ask me about?
No,
What?
yeah,
Oh,
just
so,
about things in general.
like I thought about, I was listening to the remix again today, and the remix still is, it's interesting. Kanye did that remix as one of his early placements, but that still wasn't bigger than the original record.
No, yeah.
The way remixes are done now, if we had that record in this era, we would have just gotten features on it and kept because the beat was the song. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what made it so special. So in this era, you would have just got a bunch of features on it. It'd have been Killer Mike and whoever else, you know what I mean? Whoever else made sense to be on that record. So that was something that I was thinking about that's so different in the eras, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Go ahead, Timmhotep, you want to say something?
Nah, I'm chilling, but I'm just thinking about that being one of Kanye's first early placements. And then I'm thinking about just the life that song took on itself, right? Like, for those of us, everybody probably on here watches the Chappelle Show, right?
Right.
It's interpolation of hip hop. That's kind of his theme on the Chappelle Show. You talk a little bit about how that happened?
Oh, we were on tour with the Roots, and we had done a few legs, and we had entered the Northeast, and meaning like Massachusetts and that. And Chappelle joined the tour. He was a huge Roots fan. It was like Tyler Kweli, Jazzy Fat Nasties, Jaguar Wright, you know, the Roots, the OK Player vibe, and we had been, you know, I think even Maimuna Youssef was around, Mumu Fresh was around then at that point. I think, and Chappelle was backstage, and every night, Questlove would want us to do the finale song is bigger than hip hop, while as they would play to it. And man, it began to be a thing. Like, and then I remember after the show one night, as we got ready to go on stage for the finale song, because we would go on early, and then they have a whole show, and then we would come on last just to do is bigger than hip hop with Questlove and the rest of the Roots. And you know, believe it or not, like most of them would Black Star, they knew all the lyrics. We almost didn't have to say no lyrics. They would like have microphones and they would say all the lyrics. Well, going on stage, Dave Chappelle backstage with me, probably burning a spliff, said, "Hey man, I'm gonna do a show. You know, I'm gonna do a show, and I want this song to be the show, to be the you know, the thing on the show, the song for the show." And you know, I'm thinking, you know, Dave, he wasn't the name that he is now, and I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, for sure, you know, of course, whatever you want. And sure enough, he made his deals happen and went through Comedy Central, and the thing happened. And because Dave is such counterculture, even still, he's counterculture with his 846 piece and his whole approach to comedy. We had no idea that it would become part of pop culture. You know what I mean? And I'm just appreciative of Dave Chappelle for embracing us and being real enough to invite us into his stage and his atmosphere and include us in that environment. So yeah, thank you for even asking about that. I want to say we have two things that we can play. We can play, you choose, Sean C. We can play discipline, or we can play psychology. What do you want to play?
Wow. Oh man, that's a tough one. The only reason I would say discipline, one, is short. We don't have a lot of time. And I love that song because it's light, but it's not light. Sonically, it's light, it feels good, but what it's saying is, it's like, as I said again, it's in layman's terms, and it helped me, like back then, listening to it. You know, and even now, you know, there's things that's being said in it that's like, it's a manual. You know what I mean? Right. The whole album manual, and that is one chapter. So yeah, play discipline, because people probably never heard this one.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, on celebrating the 20 year of Let's Get Free, this song is called Discipline.
Peace, who this?
I was born in a dump. My mama died and my daddy got drunk. He left me here to die, grow in the middle of Tobacco Road. Sing it with me. I grew up in arrest the shack. All I owned was hanging on my back. Y'all know it. And Lord knows how I learned. This place called Tobacco Road. Tobacco Road. You're dirty and you're filthy. Tobacco Road. Gonna get me some dynamite and a crane. I'm gonna blow it up. Lord knows and start all over again. Look, I just got to sing that because, you know, a lot of people, when we play Discipline, and Discipline is a huge hit during Dead Prez's live shows. As soon as we finish, because the album sequence has been locked in, not only to my brain, but to some people's brain, as soon as we finish, people immediately start to sing that segue that comes after Discipline. I just have to say, that was a recording that we made on probably the A Train. We late night, right as soon as like DV cameras came out, we were able to record. I recorded a guy who was sitting on the bench. He was homeless, is a African guy, black man, and you know, he had his bags all around him. No microphone. Late night, probably 2 a.m. coming back from the studio, and I had my camera on, and I recorded him singing that Tobacco Road song. And we took that right to the studio. It was so moving. It was almost the equivalent of what happens like today on Instagram, where people are singing on the train and become, you know, I wish I could find that guy and give him his credit for this. But if anyone, you know, needs to hear the story about how that happened, that's how that segment happened after that part. Timmhotep, you want to say something?
I always wondered where that came from. Was it Gil Scott-Heron or some lost recording I never heard? That's bugged out.
Yeah.
That's a field recording. Y'all put a field recording on the album. Damn.
That's right. That's right.
I'm finding stuff out. Okay. Yeah.
I want to just kind of invite everyone into this conversation at this point that would like, you know, that can be in the conversation. Sean C. and Chairman and kind of round out this night. And I want to thank you all for bearing with us. I think this has been phenomenal. I want to, I guess, say and not talk too much about it, but it's bugged out to me how important Let's Get Free is now. I see us in the streets. I see us everywhere. You know, some people are saying they're gonna stay in the streets until the next election. You know, the longest after Mike Brown was murdered. You know, you saw the people of St. Louis rise up, and they stayed out there. They want nobody going home. And I think that happened for 90 days. If I remember, at this point, what we're seeing is, you know, the real pandemic is the agenda of African people getting our freedom, you know, getting our shit that we've always deserved. And it's ironic to me, you know, because I even though we had faith and I made Let's Get Free, I have to say there have been days where many of us were murdered and there was not a response, and it infuriated me. I sat home many nights, you know, not, you know, pacing the floor, not knowing how to make heads or tails of it, not wanting to run out there and do something rash and end up, you know, in a bad way. But I just wanted to open up this conversation in this room and maybe bring out some sentiment that we can discuss, and maybe people out in the world who may be out in the streets right now and saying, where is Dead Prez? What does Dead Prez think? And why and how do we matter? You know, I just want to bring that into the room. Chairman, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we were in Ferguson, St. Louis. We're there now. We went there again because our objective has been, since our founding in 1972 as a party, to complete this revolution. Right. And they had quieted our voices. You know, we've gone for almost 3 generations without even the word revolution being used, not only in the United States, but much of the world. And, you know, they had assassinated our leaders. They had massively incarcerated people who might one day become a factor in terms of our revolutionary movement. So what happened in Ferguson is when they killed Mike Brown and they left his body for 4.5 hours, 4.5 hours on 100-degree plus asphalt for 4.5 hours. And the people did not come out saying, hands up, don't shoot. And they did not say Black Lives Matter. They said something I hadn't heard since the 60s. The Panthers used to say, off the pigs. They were saying, kill the police. This is what came out of the streets right there. And this was like an incredible development. This is for Sharpton got there, Jackson got there. And believe me, I saw more sellouts in Ferguson per square inch than you could find anywhere in the country. They brought everything in. It was Soros, billions, millions of dollars flooded the streets. They created their own so-called community organizers and did a job there. But we went in and in the streets. You know, this is one of the several rebellions I've been in the middle of, and right there, and we began to organize, and we built an organization there. And even after the cameras were gone, I mean, one thing that's happened in St. Louis that I'm concerned about happening now is because in St. Louis, generally speaking, there was no to what end. Okay, let's protest, there was no to what end. And so now protesting has become a way of life in St. Louis. It doesn't have anything to do with the people are not involved in it. You know, you see a handful of Africans, mostly white people, and they protest everything. They have this charade where they go out and say they're going to block the interstate. And so the police will open up the way for them. They come out and they sit on the interstate. No traffic goes until after the time is up. They say, okay, time up, and then they leave. And so this is just a regular routine that they have. And so again, you know, but we went in and we began building. That's why I was talking to Erykah Badu about the plan. You go and you look in St. Louis, you Google Black Power Blueprint, and you see that we've taken over parts of the whole north side of St. Louis now. We're rebuilding it. I mean, actually rebuilding it, creating entities that for where people can live. You have to see St. Louis to know what I'm talking about, just in terms of the damage that's been done, like to the community, pushing the people out. So this is the kind of stuff that's happening. We have been, you know, really building, you know, let's get free. That's what we've been doing all this time. And not just in St. Louis, not just in this country. I mean, we have a furniture store in Philadelphia, a furniture store in Oakland, California. All of this is a part of an incipient, independent economy that we're trying to build for African people, period. And we're working the same thing. What ASA is talking about, they're planning right now, developing a plan of action about how we're going to start economic development there. Part of the process is to negate what white power is doing. And I appreciated something that Timmhotep mentioned before we actually got on air about women, because half the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party are women. It's women. And then the other thing is that, I mean, and that's much of the dynamic aspects of what you see in our work is being led by sisters, sisters on top of it, sisters running it. And and this Black Power Blueprint, and I have to say this because my wife came down and gave me a dirty look not too long ago. You couldn't see her. But she wanted me, first of all, to mention that she was with me in Oxford and she was there. That was an incredible thing. And also,
I heard her. I heard her.
Okay.
you know what I'm talking about, right? That one question.
Yeah. And
right
also, she left me to go to St. Louis for a week to locate a place where we can get the Uhuru House. She was there for a year, you understand? And we've been actually on the ground building cadre among African working, ordinary Black people who catch all the hell. That's why they would say, nobody who, these young people who catching here by the police every day are going to be saying, hands up, don't shoot, Black Lives Matter. They catching hell on a regular basis. They want to off the pig. They want to get rid of these guys out of our community so they can live, so they can breathe, so to speak. And that's where we are. That's the kind of movement, contributing to building a revolutionary party that's their party. It's their party. Yeah, go ahead, come
Chairman,
on.
I don't even want to ask a question. Timmhotep, unpause your mic. You already sent it out there. Ask the question.
I want to know how we can extend this revolutionary moment, right? There is momentum, there is energy amongst the people, there's an awakening happening where we're all understanding the stuff that you talk about on Let's Get Free. It's all real in front of our face and contextualized for us, right? How do we keep this momentum up? How do we change that energy into actual organization and obviously change?
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, that's part of what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Because the people don't need me to teach them how to do a demonstration or to throw a brick or something like that. We have to take science into the masses, into the motion of the people, bring them into revolutionary organization when we can, but also recognize and remember it's a protracted struggle. We've done, much of this we've done before, but there's something essential that's happening at this moment. I mean, when I say this moment, I'm just not talking about George Floyd. I'm talking about the imperialist economy itself is in a state of free fall. The largest hegemon in the world, in the United States, is in a free fall in terms of its reputation, its power. It's being challenged by all kinds of forces out there, China being one of them, Russia being one of them, Venezuela. Everybody is now trying to make the break for freedom, and we are part of that process. As long as we don't lose sight of that, as long as we don't, and the question of Africa is critical to that too. Because part of what we are doing philosophically, first of all, we got to say to what end? And secondly, we got to remember how this thing got started, because it didn't get started yesterday. America is a settler colony. The United States is a settler colony in the same way the so-called apartheid regime in South Africa, and the same way those white people who stole the land from Palestine, who call themselves Israelis and renamed the land, they're settlers there. And the same way you look at places like New Zealand, Australia, where they come in and kill all the Black people and then give it a different name and call themselves by the name, they're settlers there. This is a really unsettling and really important question for us to understand, and we are colonized. There's no way in hell. How do you solve a problem? You say, I'm fighting against racism. What is racism? It's the ideological underpinning of a social system. And so you see China, you see Russia, you see Iranians, you see Syrians, you see people all around the world trying to show sympathy to us. And so you say, help us make white people like us? Is that the objective? I'm in the struggle to make white people like us. Can you help us? No. They understand colonialism, because all Black people around the world live under a form of colonialism, whether it's direct or indirect colonialism. That's what we're dealing with. That's the struggle. So our objective in terms of tactics and strategy is to build a dual and contending power. And that's what the work you see us doing in St. Louis and other places. It's a dual power. It's not the assumption that we can share the same space forever. It's a dual and contending power. It's a competing power. We want to push them out of our lives and create our own capacity. Comrade, Sister Erykah Badu was talking about legislation. We want to be the legislators. We want to have our own state power. And if you're not preparing to govern, you're not really talking about power. I mean, so you find yourself forever hoping, praying, oh God, please let a good white man get elected, or white woman, or almost like Obama used to be Black, I think. No, something like that, you know what I mean? You sit around praying for that to happen. But we're talking about 20 years after this album. And not only has nothing changed positive for us, stuff is worse in so many ways, but the system itself is in a state of crisis. Our objective is to deepen the crisis, not find ourselves falling into this place where we're trying to solve our problems in a way that holds up the system. And that's what the fight against racism is about. Because if you're talking about fighting against racism, you're talking about perfecting the system of colonialism.
That's right.
How do you even do that in the first place? How do you know when you won the battle? Does somebody come out and wave a white flag and say, okay, we surrender,
we like
racism is defeated? There's no way. And so that's the struggle we're involved in. And I know I overtalked it, Timmhotep.
No, you didn't. You didn't. I
yeah.
want to kick that energy over to Sean. You're not excluded from this, Sean.
No.
You sitting here. You working with you work with the top-notch artists in the industry. You have produced for Jay-Z. You are working with the phenomenal Black Thought. You are you as a person inside music, but in real life, you know, and who's a part of this conversation. So it's not like you live in some sort of vacuum. How can we, and look, we see evidence of the world changing as a result of these kind of struggles. Look, I looked up today and Little Baby made a song that I love. You know, like, you know, y'all know the song that I'm talking about. Like, this man is talking about real power right now, about our people. And this is these guys who was in the trap just a minute ago. I'm talking about just 2 weeks ago, they was in the trap.
Yeah.
You know, what can we do, Sean, to influence revolutionary culture, or what is happening? What are you seeing that can use this energy that Chairman Omali Yeshitela is talking about to deepen the crisis, or is it in the music, or is it possible?
I think
before Sean responds to that, please, I just want to say this. In the 1960s, part of what happened was U.S. imperialism was defeated ideologically and politically. Black people had turned our back on the system. That's when you saw some of the most revolutionary organizations come about. That's when you saw people talking about Black power, having our own power and what have you. And that's when you saw the U.S. government use the only thing it had left. It had lost ideologically, it has lost politically in our communities, and the armed military response was the only thing that they had left, and that's what they came at us with. And you know the outcome of that. So I'm sorry, anytime
you want to say anything, I wish I had the complete answer to that, but I do think, I mean, it kind of piggybacks on what Chairman was saying. The climate dictates what the music does.
Yes.
And, you know, I had this discussion with someone a while ago about why in the 80s, in the mid 80s and 90s, hip hop was way more political. You had Public Enemy, you had KRS-One, you had X-Clan, you had all of these artists. And even if you weren't, say, a quote unquote political rapper, you always had a record where you had to say something, you had to speak to it. And that is because that was the 80s, which was closer. We were only one generation removed from the struggle. Our parents were in the struggle. So we related to it. And as time went on, things, you know, technology, all these things changed. People, you know, the 2 or 3 generations in the past have not felt the same thing. They've been removed. Crack has changed. They're grandchildren of crack babies, you know, and children of crack babies. And that has changed just the dynamic of what rappers have spoken about. So now, with the pandemic happening, with you know, cell phones and everything that we're visually seeing now, it has forced a little baby to have to say something, because now you look crazy going on Instagram and not addressing certain things. You know what I mean? So the climate is what dictates what hip hop has always been reporting the culture of the youth and what we do. And that is what's gonna I don't think we have to tell them what to do. This is what's gonna, you know, organically happen. And everybody won't do it. And you do have to have balance. Everybody can't talk about the same thing, but there will be stronger content, I think, coming out now than before. It's already happening, you know?
And let me add on to that a little bit, because
please,
part of my charge as a journalist, as a person who's immersed in culture, is to be aware of the new stuff that's coming up. And I gotta say, I'm very impressed by like No Name out of Chicago, right?
Yes.
This is an artist who's using their platform to become straight up and down revolutionary, right? Like, check out her Twitter feed if y'all not up on it, and definitely join her book club. This is a young woman who's in her early 20s talking about, y'all need to read Blood in My Eye, right? Like, this is the person who's talking about capitalism is trash. Amazon is fucking it up for everybody. Like, And it's very heartening. It's very exciting to see this type of conversation, this type of critical thinking happening from young people. And I'm seeing it come out in their art. You know, shout out to Earl Sweatshirt. Shout out to like there's so
Kimba.
young
Kimba.
people. Kimba. Shout out to Kimba from the Bronx.
Kimba from the Bronx.
Some people who are tapped in, right? Who are aware and are pushing things forward from the perspective of revolutionary cultural workers. And we gotta always keep our eye out for them. And whenever we see them, lift them up. So I'm gonna shout out my man Lucid. Shout out to Arm & Hammer. Shout out to like Sidewalk Cal. There's so many cats out there that's on the right type of time. So yeah,
I love it. Look, we are 10:58. We look.
Eat dinner.
We done took people dinner time and all that. I want to round it out by starting. I guess letting us all have a last word, and I want the final word to end up with Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Simply only because Timmhotep, you just spoke. Sean C, is there anything you'd like to say as we round out tonight, or what are you working on, or any just whatever you'd like to say? Yeah.
I'll try to keep it as short as possible. One thing that I did learn from you guys, and that has stayed with me throughout, and we continue to communicate. It's not like it's been 20 years since we've spoken. So you yourself and stay communicating with and building with on ways that I could become better, how we all can become better, and how we could all add to each other and add to just the generation. So for me, I just want to express the health aspect of things, and not like I'm a health guru or whatever the case is, but I try to be as healthy as I can. I exercise as much as I can, and these things will and train and learn how to be as self-sufficient as you can as a man and as a woman, so that whatever situations come to you, you're able to deal with it. So of course you can't know every situation, but you should learn how to do, like, we've learned from this pandemic, all these things, it's put us in a situation that we haven't been in before in this generation. So we had to learn things and learn different skills and learn as much as you can. Train for self-defense, train for health, because all of these things will help you with whatever your adversary is, from the virus to the police to whatever it is. Be as healthy as you can and look out for your comrades and give them information as much as you can. The other thing, as far as a producer, I have as music, I have the next Black Thought solo record coming out.
Streams of Thought is crazy. Shout out to them Stream of Thought joints, bro.
Streams of Thought Volume 3 is Streams of Thought Volume 3, Cain and Abel. So I'm Cain, he's Abel. And so look for that coming in July. And my Instagram is @it's Sean C.
Awesome. I'm gonna go next, and then I'm gonna let Timmhotep go, and then we're gonna do Chairman. I want to concur with you 100%. Learn how to get out of them chokeholds, because they're not gonna stop. I think our strongest self-defense is going to be organization. We have to be organized, and we have to be knowing, like Chairman said, to what end. This can't just be just because. We have to see the end goal, and I've had it in my mind since before Let's Get Free. I see us people tearing down statues and murals, and King Leopold got taken down, and Robert E. Lee and all these crackers. We can't just tear down look. Chairman Omali Yeshitela tore down the mural in St. Petersburg, however many years ago. But they tried to give him a plaque recently. He said, "I ain't want no plaque. I want freedom." The question was freedom. So we can tear down this bullshit, the symbols, but we have to tear down the system. In order for it to matter. And so I'm going to continue to contribute. Look for new music coming. Look for me to direct you toward organization and stay on what I'm staying on. And you know where I'm at if you know me. And I'm not going to stop coming. Timmhotep, would you like to say something?
I would. I definitely want to just kind of build on what you guys just said, Matulu and Sean. I think the need for preparation is very, very important, and my ears are closest to me, so I need to get on my discipline and my health like I need to be, and my focus. And another thing I want people to really start to exercise is their revolutionary imagination. When Erykah was on earlier, she talked about hearing Let's Get Free and then being able to envision a future of freedom based on that, right? And that's a very important work that the artists do. They use their creativity to create a future, right? I'm in the process of trying to do that myself and organize with people of like minds to do that. So everybody working your imagination. What's presented to you as the norm and status quo, like it's always supposed to be there, it's not true. It could be something different that is embracing of all of us. You know, like every single human life, every single Black life is important, and we can have a future that is for us, right? So that's my last words on that. You can catch my work at Afropunk. Shout out to Afropunk crew. And if you want to check me out to see what I'm thinking about, talking about, I do a radio show on NTS Radio out of the US, out of the UK, called Subject to Change. It's about Black music. It's about themes of liberation. And yeah, if you want to follow me, I'm TIMMHOTEP on Twitter and Instagram. That's it.
Got you. Chairman, before you begin, and because I know it's going to be so dynamic, I have to say a few things. Just because I know your word is going to be the final word. There's a few people I'd be remiss. I want to really shout out my partner Stick. He's this is his work. You know, this is his work. This is our work. We did this together. The way we were able to wrestle and figure things out around this has meant a lot for me in my life, and he is my brother for life. And I love him and his family. I want to send a big shout out to his family the same way I had done. I want to talk about Tahir and Abu and Pills and Jay and Hakima and Karan. They were the ones who went from Tallahassee to New York with us. You are not forgotten, and I know you and I love you. Lord Jamar, you know, 'cause a lot of people credit you for discovering Dead Prez and for whatever that's worth. I give thanks for you for the work you did on 560 State Street, the same building that Jay was in and us building in that time. Brooklyn, Matt Life, Scott Freak, Ola Kudu, Kerry Clad. These are all people who helped form and help us make the vision for that album. Steve Rifkin, Brian, Charlene, Noah, B. Win. And I want to shout out our moms and our dads. And I definitely want to give a big shout to my mom, who's not here now, who passed around 2 months ago. And just say, you know, the spirit of everybody who has been in this process and who we have lost. I want to send a ashe and thank you for that. So, Chairman, the floor is yours.
Uhuru, first of all, I just want to express my appreciation to you, Comrade Mutulu, and to Kanum. It's hard to even state the significance of our relationship as revolutionaries and people who came together to overturn this oppression that our people experience. I want to say that it's been impressive watching you develop your craft as you and Stick. And that's been something to behold and really be impressed with. And I appreciate Comrade Timmhotep and Shansi. I've learned so much just being here with you and with Erykah Badu for the brief period she was here. I'm glad to know that you're there. I want to call on you, to tell you the truth, because we got a lot of work to do. And organization is key, it's fundamental. One man once said that in order for there to be revolution, and that's what we're talking about, as quiet as it's kept, while people often are willing to recognize that Africans are oppressed, if we are oppressed, there must be an oppressor. We don't oppress ourselves, so there is an oppressor. And that oppressor is a foul social system. The fundamental contradiction in the whole world today is that one which is a contradiction between oppressed and oppressor nations of people. And everything else revolves around that. Everything else is subordinate to that, which is not to say that there are no contradictions within our communities. There are. Men oppress women in our communities. Homosexuals are treated badly often in our communities, other things. And there are contradictions in the white communities, and white women get oppressed and white homosexuals get oppressed, etc. But the fundamental contradiction is this contradiction that exists between oppressed and oppressor nations. And this is the basis for the existence of all the other contradictions that we talk about. The oppression of white women cannot be resolved, or they can be resolved at our expense. Unfortunately, that's what too often happens. When I see a lot of white people in the streets, I'm not necessarily celebrating it as being for the same thing, because I agree that a lot of white people are in pain. But the oppression of all the people in the world rests upon a foundation of African slavery and colonialism. And what has to happen is they have to develop the ability to unite under the leadership of the oppressed African and of other peoples around the world. We can overturn the whole system that way. Otherwise, what we do is find opportunities for white women to join the Air Force and bomb people who are oppressed in this place or that place, et cetera. And that's not what we're looking for. And so I just want to express my appreciation again for this, and for to have an opportunity to have this discussion and see the humility of Sean C. and experience the humility of Timmhotep and Erykah Badu. That's important to me. And I know there are others out there as well. Organization is fundamental. Somebody said it, and it's true, that for revolution to happen, there are several things that have to exist. And one of them is crisis. We see crisis everywhere. Crisis abounds. The whole rotten, foul social system is big time trouble. And the orange man is just one indicator of how much trouble they're in. And in addition to crisis, the ruling class must not be able to rule in the same old way. And we see that they can't do stuff the way they used to do it. Even right now, they're running from the masses of people. I mean, you got this guy in the White House with the lights out in a hole underground, you know, because the masses, this is big, tough, you know, guy, you know, who's that? So the ruling class can't rule in the same old way anymore. You've got people who would play us, you know, and all of a sudden, people like Bernie Sanders and others, not just Sanders, younger versions, they're now socialists. But their socialism is Bernie Sanders $15 an hour over a number of years and some kind of healthcare, universal healthcare. That ain't socialism. Socialism is when the workers who produce all the value, the working class becomes the ruling class. The working class owns and controls the means of production. And maybe, Bernie, maybe we'll give you $15 an hour over a number of years. You know what I'm saying? You don't set the terms like that. And then we've got people, you know, who suddenly for reparations, that they will make it an issue that they'll turn into a new poverty program. And I saw the guy who used to own BET. He's asking for $14 trillion. I mean, so he wants to leverage the motion of the mass of the people to get some action himself. He sees a vulnerability there, and that's what he wants to talk about. So the working class has to have its own organization, its own party that can speak to its own interests. And when I say working class, I'm not talking about everybody. You know, majority of Africans may not even have a job, but if they had a way to make a living, they'd have to sell the value of their labor power to get it. So they're unemployed workers. And you find people who, in our case, you know, like you see people who may not be what might be normally characterized as working class. They might come from the petty bourgeoisie or middle class. But if that's the case, you know, just like Cabral in Guinea-Bissau, just like Mao, just like even Marx and Lenin and Che Guevara, this was the petty bourgeoisie. But they committed what Cabral called class suicide. They abandoned the interests of the petty bourgeoisie, and united with the interests and aspiration of the masses of our people. And so there has to be crisis. The ruling class cannot rule in the same old way. And the masses have to have concluded that anything is better than this. And they will face, you've seen people who will face tanks. We saw that in Ferguson, people picking up sticks and whatever. We saw it in Palestine. We saw it in Soweto, other places. When that kind of thing becomes generalized, where the people would do anything, and death is not something that can deter them, or imprisonment. And then also, in order for there to be revolution, there must be a revolutionary party that is guided by advanced revolutionary theory. That's the African People's Socialist Party. That's African internationalism. And so that's what we want to win too, because there has to be a to what end. We have to govern. We have to get power. And the political party is the best instrument through which we can capture and wield political power. So that's what we're talking about. And I just appreciate everybody being here. And I want to just make just a couple of announcements that on November, on August, Marcus Garvey birth anniversary around August 17th, or whatever weekend, I think that's the 15th, there's going to be a Black is Back Coalition conference that's happening. You should go to blackisbackcoalition.org. But everybody should be prepared for November, because November 6th through the 8th, we're having a massive mobilization in Washington, D.C. We're going to the White House. This is going to be the ultimate response to what people are trying to deal with right now. It's going to be for Black Power. And it's going to be a march for Black Power November 6th through the 9th. So people should, 6th through the 8th. So people should be aware of that. And go to, look us up, go to apspuhuru.org and join the African People's Socialist Party, join the Uhuru Movement. Let's go ahead and finish this damn thing, you know, because a long time ago I said independence in my lifetime. And, you know, I still got a few more years in my, I want to be able to do it while my
trigger finger working.
Yeah, you know, so I work out every day. So, you know, come on and let's go ahead and do this thing. And again, M1 and Stick and Sean C. and Timmhotep and all of your comrades and the people who participated in engineering this, I just want to express my really profound appreciation for you. We are winning, and truly we are winning. And this is part of the evidence of that, the fact that we're here today having this discussion. And also in response to Timmhotep, this is part of the intervention that we're having in what's going on in the streets today. People don't need us to know how to do a demonstration. We've had more than 20 party in the Uhuru Movement in this country and in South Africa and in England, UK, where Sean C said he's doing something, or was it, yeah, Sean C. So we're in those places as well, and we're on the street, but the fundamental thing that we have to bring is what came with Let's Get Free. We bring in theory and science to the people so that there can be a to what end, that people can find the way. So I just want to thank you so much, comrades. Thank you all for participating with us on this. And you know, 20 years later, we're still in the trenches, and we'll be here till we win. And yeah, and we are winning. Uhuru, thank you so much.